Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Sachem Board of Education, Wednesday, September 22nd. Before the meeting, if I'd ask everyone please rise for the pledge and join us in a moment of silence. I'd like to dedicate this moment of silence to the entire Bayport Blue Point community who's going through multiple unspeakable tragedies at this time. And as our neighbor to the south, we pray that everything gets better very quickly. At this time, I'd like to pass the meeting over to Dr. Pelletieri for the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much. We're going to jump right in. We have some special four-legged friends here tonight, some guests that we want to get to right away. We've been looking forward to this, and unfortunately, we've been delaying, so I apologize. The business of the district has never been done, obviously, and this is a big, important part of it. So, Mrs. Hines, I'm going to ask you to do some just quick introductions, if you don't mind, as you're about to sip your water. And let's bring up our team here, please.
Well, thank you. I was glad I wasn't sipping my water. But I think I'm going to just let our fine staff here introduce our four-legged friends. This is something we've been really looking forward to add to our social emotional learning program and supports for our students, especially at the secondary level. So without further ado, I introduce to you Bailey and Oakley.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having us here tonight. My name is Christine Launer, and I am a counselor at Sachem North. This is Nicole Kerber, and she is a counselor at Sachem East. And together, we have adopted two golden doodles who are sisters, and we are in training to be therapy dogs to come into the schools eventually, hopefully sooner rather than later, and to provide the students overall stress management, boosts the morale in the building, and to help with the ever-growing mental health issues that are happening in the schools today. So a little background on the girls. They're 7 months old, and they don't get to see each other very often, so that's why they're so excited tonight.
That's why they're very excited.
We got them back in June, and we've been training all summer. We go to a trainer once a week for about an hour, and we're working towards the Canine Good Citizen test. And this is a series of 10 skills that the dogs have to master in order to pass their first level of certification. Everything from basic commands, sitting, laying down, to being greeted by a stranger, walking through a crowd of people, and just overall behavior. Once we pass that, which we're very close to doing, they will then join the Therapy Dogs of Long Island. We'll partner up with them, and we'll be going into nursing homes and hospitals and having 10 hours of observation by trained behavioral specialists who will then officially certify them as school therapy dogs. And from that, we'll be covered under the insurance through that organization, and the girls will be volunteering all over Long Island in schools, hospitals, and nursing homes.
They just want to play with one another.
Also, another background history on the girls, the reason we chose them, they're from Indiana. They're from a litter of about 6 puppies who were also used to purchased for therapy purposes. And they passed a test. We didn't know this, but dogs have an aptitude test. So at 7 weeks old, they take something called the Volhard aptitude test for dogs. And it's another series of how do they react to loud noises? How do they respond to people approaching them? Social dominance, things like that. Both these girls received 3s and 4s, which are exactly where they're supposed to be for therapy purposes. So, Bailey, you want to say hi? Go ahead.
Bailey's going to get detention soon. She keeps calling out like that.
She misses her sister. And so then we kept them at the trainers for a few weeks.
They're both girls.
We kept them at the trainers for a few weeks also to do some basic training, learning their names. You want to go say hi again? Go ahead. Let's say hi. There you go. So they're still in training. They'll always be in training. We're constantly working with them. And we as counselors just feel like with all the years of experience that we have, even before the pandemic, we saw a rise in anxiety and depression and suicide. So being dog lovers that we are, we felt that there was a really big need for this. And it's just an added layer for students. Students these days too, they don't know how to communicate as well. So having this non-judgmental dog there really helps them feel comfortable and at ease, and then open up a little bit quicker and maybe even a little bit more. So we just feel like having them with us in our office will really help the overall population of the Sachem district. Yes, so right in front of you, we have handed out a pamphlet of information. The first page is our facts, answers the questions. It's what is a school therapy dog, the history of the dogs, the training that we're doing. This will be available in the guidance office too for any students who wish to come and read a little bit about them. We're going to be posting it on our Google pages. And we actually also have a social media campaign that we're going to launch. The Instagram page is Sachem Paws with the Cause. So once we are officially approved, we'd like to put this up along with videos of the girls so that the entire community can follow the girls in their journey and read about what they're doing in each of the schools. If we go to visit the elementary schools, the kids can see what we're doing with them. So on here is everything about how we're going to implement them in the building as well. We are going to put out an opt-out form to the community and the staff. While we're dog lovers, we know not everybody is, and we understand fully that people have allergies. So the opt-out form will allow staff members, students to say that they'd rather not interact with the dog. We also have an option on there that allows them to say, you know what, I'm afraid of dogs, but after looking at the video, I kind of want to maybe meet them. And then we'll work with them on exposing them to the dogs in a safe environment.
Just to see if maybe they can overcome that fear.
Yeah, and if anyone has an allergy, the girls are 75% poodle and 25% golden doodle, which makes them very hypoallergenic. So if someone has an allergy, there's a good chance they may not actually be allergic to these dogs. So if they're willing to test that out with the parents' permission, we would have the dogs come down and see if they're able to be near the dogs. So if someone fills out the opt-out form, we would make a note to not go near the students in that classroom or in the hallways, or if they come down to the guidance office, we would make sure that the dogs are in a safe area away from the students. Also on the guidance doors, we're making signs that say Bailey is in today or Bailey is not in today. So that if anyone walks into the office and they're afraid, they know whether or not the dog will be there.
Great.
You want to talk a little bit about the office?
Yes.
Setup?
So on the east side, we do have an indicated space for Bailey where we can we ordered a pen for her, and there's going to be a space where she's going to be housed. And then this way, anyone within the guidance suite, from any of the guidance counselors to the social worker within that guidance suite, the substance abuse counselor, if the dog or if Bailey is in her pen, then that means she's available for use. So if a student comes down upset or, just needs to calm down and could really benefit from Bailey being in the office and just being present in the office, that counselor can come and utilize Bailey. Just going back to the mental health in teens today, like even prior to the pandemic, the mental health in teens was declining really at a faster rate than we're, at times even able to handle. So these are pretty alarming statistics. One in 5 children has mental health problems today. And then within the past 15 years, we've seen a 43% increase in ADHD, 37% increase in teen depression, and 100% increase in suicide within kids ages 10 to 14 years old. So that's pretty alarming, So to have something like this, especially I know at the secondary level, there are some times where students maybe aren't so apt to open up when they come to speak to a counselor. So having the dog there as an icebreaker, it really breaks down those walls. Even if they start petting the dog and just being playful with the dog, it opens up the door for more communication with that student. So we think that's super important. We also think that just morale in the building overall. from, adults, staff, just various departments within the building. From the art department, they do murals and things like that. So we were thinking that we can integrate like the use of the dogs into the different departments. For family consumer science, in the culinary arts or baking and pastry, they can make them treats. Fashion and sewing classes can make them like little bandanas or things like that. The art department can make signs like Bailey's in, Oakley's in, for each counselor. Absolutely. The construction classes, if they want to make something, so it goes, you could really get creative with all of this, and we think that it could be really positive for the building.
I have to say too, like as we've been talking to the staff members and some of the students, I've been trying to just mention to my students that this might be coming down the road, and I have some items in my office, like a crate and things. They're wondering, what is that here for? And I'm explaining this, and they are so excited and joking around saying, I'm going to get stressed out on purpose so I can come down here. I have teachers already emailing me, can we please set up a schedule? I want the dog to come into the classroom and have it as like a reward for the kids. And this is at the high school level. So, if and when we ever get to the elementary level, I can't even imagine, because I'm sure the younger kids will be even more thrilled. I have my children here, and they actually have a therapy dog in their school already, and it greets them every day that they get off the bus, and they love it. They think it's adorable. It's a great way to start their day. And research shows that just having a dog in the room or petting a dog boosts your oxytocin levels and just reduces your blood pressure and just makes you overall a lot happier. You're welcome. Any questions? Yes.
It seems to me that this would be a great thing at the elementary level, especially at the elementary level.
Yes.
Just a question. You talked about getting the dog certified for insurance reasons. Did you mention something like that?
Not for insurance reasons, but to become fully certified as school therapy dog. And then the organization that would do the full certification is where we're going to have the liability insurance.
Okay, that's how you tied that in. Okay.
Right now, we have them under
They're covered under our insurance right now.
Okay. And you take these dogs home? I mean,
Yes.
are they're your pets as well? Okay. How do you get them to, let's say, the elementary level now?
Before you guys
Just-
answer
yeah.
questions, if the person who answers the question could talk, just so anybody at home could maybe hear it if they're interested. I'm sorry. I know you're both answering at the same time. I apologize for interrupting.
So somebody needs the dogs or requires, or says that they could really help at one of the elementaries. So what would they do? How did they get the dogs?
What we could do is we would obviously have to set that up ahead of time. So, we could take turns going to the elementary buildings and really doing whatever programs there. So that's something that we hope to be able to do,
Yeah.
and just like anything else, we're going to have to manage our time and be able to do, obviously our jobs and what we need to do at our level and in our buildings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
our jobs come first, so we're high
Yeah.
school counselors first, and the high school students will get the benefit of them being in our building, every day if possible. We can schedule maybe monthly visits to elementary schools or whenever we can, but definitely we would love to visit.
Yeah, I see a big value in this. I really do. I see a big value.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're hoping maybe this starts a trend, and maybe someone at the elementary level would want to,
Yeah.
or maybe they have a therapy
Yeah.
dog and we don't even know.
It is exploding. Nationwide, this is a big thing. Lots of schools all over the country already have school therapy dogs in place, in-house, not just bringing them in for an hour a day. New York and Long Island is just starting to get, wind of this. And like I said, Oyster Bay schools have a therapy dog now. Great Neck has one. And there's a few more that are starting to pop up with in-house dogs.
Maybe you could think of a school board therapy dog.
Exactly.
They would have to come home for us for our emails.
Any other questions?
Thank you guys so much for making tonight's presentation. It's exciting, something new, and we're willing to try anything if it helps.
Awesome. Thank you for your support.
So,
We appreciate
so we
it.
are forging ahead, correct? We are
Yes.
forging ahead, absolutely. Thank you so much. And
Oh, sorry, Vin, I'm sorry.
I just hope that you'll come back at the end of the school year and report on how.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. And Sage and Paws of the Cause, you guys can follow us on Instagram. So we'll be posting all the different things the girls are going to be doing in the schools too. So it'll be fun.
You could find the Instagram information on that FAQ page on the back, on the bottom. So anything that we do, you know, with the students and anything like that, we'll definitely post all those things.
Did you
We'll
say
be happy to
when,
come back and share?
did you say when you thought that they would be, and start to be in the schools? Like when do you think time frame?
I mean, tomorrow, if
Tomorrow,
it's okay with you.
I didn't know if they had to get that
They're ready.
I didn't know if they had to get the certification before they.
Yeah, we still have a little tidying up we need to
Okay.
do first.
Okay. Okay,
Before
deal.
we have the dogs full-time in school. So we'll meet again with Erin as we did over the summer, and we'll come up with a plan and make sure our principals are on board and staff and get the opt-out to parents and things like that if there are
Absolutely. Okay.
concerns. But we will move full speed ahead. I've seen this at work, and it's just amazing what it can do for our kids and our adults as well, the staff as well. So amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for having us.
You want to take a picture with the dog? Go ahead. Yes. Let's take a picture with the dog. Mr. O'Brien is here from and we'll put it online. Thank you. That is. Yeah, we're going to continue, right? Okay, we are going to continue now. The board in a prior meeting had asked for a future discussion around or a presentation on curriculum. And I asked Ms. Hines to give us a quick update on some of the curriculum writing that we did this past summer and what to expect this year as we move forward. Ms. Hines?
Hello, thank you. If you don't mind, I'm going to sit this way so I could see a little bit better. So yes, it was. Sorry. No problem, Bailey. She's very excited about curriculum and instruction. So in some past board meetings, it was requested that we dive a little bit deeper into our social emotional learning program, as well as just talk about some work that's been going on. For me, that was a yay moment because I get to kind of shine a light on some of the great work that we were able to continue to do even through the pandemic. Wait, there we go. So just really quickly, I did want to go through that and just an overview, because it's been a while since we did this. Just our beliefs, in our office about instruction is mastery versus coverage, using data to make instructional choices, district created curriculum versus canned programs so that they can be individualized to the needs of our students. Collaboration is really key for us whenever we bring in a program or create something. It's really important to us that our students are engaged and we're working towards them unpacking their own learning and independency. Equal access for all. You've heard Dr. Pilitari and I talk a lot about how we are really making strides towards getting kids more access to those higher order classes starting in the 8th grade, moving up to the high school. And that students can show you in a variety of ways the things that they know. And this is for all of our students, E&L, special education, and general education. And I just want to alert you too that these beliefs came out of the conversations that we've been having in our curriculum council. So each year we look at it, we look to see if there's anything else that we would like to add, change, adjust. So that is sort of like our mission vision, I guess, of our curriculum committee. Okay, so really quick, Dr. Piltari asked me to swoosh these in so that they weren't too overwhelming, but I do want to share again the exciting work that we were able to complete last year. Okay, so we were able to update our elementary curriculum guides for both our staff and our parents. They are a digital dashboard, so to speak, so that you can go in. Teachers would have full access to obviously their curriculum, all the things that we have for each area. And then parent versions are going up on the website as well, so they can see the different units that we have and instructional technology to support them.
Mrs. Hines, where would I find that if I were a parent?
That would be
Curriculum
on,
page
yep,
or-
on my curriculum page, which I know you're going to go over tonight. So that will be like a hot button issue for us. We probably would put it right on the front page is when they initially come out. And I'll be sending out a school messenger as well. Okay, writing task force. We started this prior to the pandemic. We're looking at writing across the board K-12. We do meet with a variety of teachers in the elementary schools and our English departments. Is trying to spill over into our content area. Last year, we were able to create rubrics for all grades K-5, and we also began units of study for writing in all of our grades. Next slide, I'll share with you the work that we're starting for this year. K-5, we explored a variety of new kits to coincide with the new standards that we have, and we did choose one this year. So again, that took place last year. Our piloting and looking at a variety of resources. Secondary science, we were able to revise our lab books to align to the shifts in the instructional practices and the new standards. We instituted Read 180, which is a literacy intervention program at our middle schools. We did not have necessarily a nationally normed literacy intervention program, so that's what we were able to start piloting and using last year. We also piloted NWEA so that we had a variety of data points that our teachers can use on top of the benchmarks that we have currently in place. Data teams, we reinstituted and started modeling for all of our building administration, how to look at the various data points that we have to ensure that we're individualizing instruction for our students, especially as we knew that we were going to have learning gaps coming into the fall this year. Seo and Wellness, we updated our health curriculum K-12 and realigned Lions Quest K-5 so that they were anchor lessons, which you'll see a little bit after this. We updated our transition meetings at grades 5 and 6 and 8 and 9 to encompass more of the social and emotional learning piece into it. And to and that's for every single student, by the way, grades 5 and 6 and 8 and 9, with a focus on our remote learners. Again, just making sure that when they came back this year, we had background on them. We streamlined and updated protocols for our instructional support teams. So that's RTI, making sure that across all of our buildings in the elementary schools, we were looking at common data. We were looking at common practices for guided reading, guided math, ways that we should be offering support and resources at the first level, second level, starting with the classroom. We also audited our instructional models and protocols for our ICT or our integrated co-teaching classrooms. And that was a really nice, audit of learning about all the different resources that we have, ways that we want to ensure consistency, and ways that we want to update our practices for this year. We dehubbed the last of our E&L continuum schools. That was at the middle schools. So now all of our E&L students, for the most part in our elementary and our middle, are in their home buildings. Any of those students that started K up that were in the middle school going into East, we did grandfather and give them the choice of whether or not they wanted to return to North or if they wanted to stay with their fellow students moving into East. And then on top of all, we also really worked to support our remote learners and our remote teachers, the Rosa Academy, and our summer programs. Our summer programs is something that really was a nice pride point for us in the summer. Most of our students that needed credit recovery at the high school level was in fact able to get that credit recovery, and we had quite a few students K and 8 that were able to get ELA and math support as well as enrichment. Okay, it's not going. Whoops.
Mrs. Hines, before you go on, how many students chose to stay with the group that they had, the ENL students, and how many chose to go back to their home school?
Most of the students did stay moving into East. We just have like a handful of students that were either in North already, and we were kind of doing like a consult model, helping them because of their proficiency level. They weren't like new entry. So we really didn't have much of a shift moving from East to North. Okay. And then our summer curriculum writing, we introduced, as Ms. Graham And Ms. John I've said in the past to elementary counselors. So we had curriculum writing around that to ensure that we had anchor lessons going on in our buildings that support Lions Quest and our social and emotional learning, as well as other things that they will be doing. General music, they are looking to update, and they're in the process of adding things like piano instruction, just, a variety of ways so that if you're not in band or chorus, you're able to have experience in the middle schools and the high schools with other items in music. E&L beginners, we have quite a few new E&L students in our district, especially coming into the summer months, going now into the fall. So we finished a beginner's curriculum so that no matter what class or what grade level they were in, again, those anchor skills and strategies working with our beginner entrance students. Secondary math for support and enrichment. So when we talked about those fifth graders going into the middle school, and then from eighth grade going into the high school, updates to our curriculum and enrichment so that we can support those students to be able to get into those higher order classes in the eighth grade. And then CTE, if you remember a couple of years back, we talked about really just strengthening those programs at the high school and starting to do introductory units at the middle school so that students can kind of get some experience so that if they chose to go into a CTE program in the high school, they already had a little bit of experience around that. Okay, so this year, and I'll go through this very quickly, we're expanding our digital dashboard curriculum guides to now secondary. So every department will be building that. That will again be all the curriculum that we have on Google for our staff. For the parents, they'll be able to see all the different units, different types of classes that they have, and instructional technology to support that. Writing task force, we will continue with our K-5 writing units, and now we will start the work in the middle schools. And we also hope to start in the high schools, just kind of streamlining some of the units that we already have.
Mrs. Hines, real quick, who are the people that are writing these units? That's a better
It would be our
question.
teachers.
Okay.
And we're working with Sarah Cordova. She is a pretty renowned consultant that works with quite a few districts across Long Island. Her staff has been working with us through this since the beginning, well over 2 years ago when we have been starting to meet with our middle schools and our high schools and elementary together.
I asked because a concern was raised to me last year and again this year, just in terms of making sure that we are all on the same page when it comes to the delivery of the curriculum. And so
Correct.
our teachers are writing the curriculum themselves, and now with your dashboard, they're able to access that one curriculum that we deliver across
Yes.
the district.
That was actually the purpose of it. The reason why we wanted to update our curriculum guides is so that it was pretty explicit. And that was the feedback that we heard back from our staff too. Just wanted to make sure that everybody was on the same page in terms of where you should be in science throughout the year, especially at the elementary level, because we have 10 buildings. There's some autonomy, of course, but the foundation is the curriculum that we've adopted. And so as we write any curriculum, again, it's approved and then it's attached to where it needs to be on our curriculum guides. K-5 science, we will now have staff development and start implementing our new units that we have. Very excited about that. These are hands-on, again, units, so really making science come alive for us. Secondary science, we will continue to transition to those next generation science standards. Emily Kang, again, is another renowned consultant. She will continue to work with our staff. We're very excited to have her. She's very hard to come by, but I think due to our size and the fact that we've been quite progressive about transitioning into it, even though the regions haven't changed, really made her want to jump on board with us. We will begin implementing now NWEA. Our elementary schools are in the process of starting those administrations right now, and then we'll continue in the middle schools. Once the benchmarks are completed, we will start our first round of data teams so that we can look at the data together. We will expand on Read 180 literacy interventions. Right now, I can safely say that any child requiring reading AIS supports at the middle schools at some point will be entering into the Read 180 program. So that is huge for us, and I'm really thankful for that. And we're also starting to pilot Math 180 so that we have both a literacy and a math intervention at the middle schools. Data teams, as I said before, K-12, we will be starting next month in the elementary schools following their benchmark assessments. We will then move to the middle school, and the high schools we will start in November as well. We will be looking at their updated baselines that we'll be doing, as well as looking at their midterms at the end of January going into February, and then of course in July looking at the region scores. Our SEO and Wellness. So we will begin, as we've been talking about, our code of character, which is kind of those proactive strategies. It goes hand in hand with the RTI SEL piece of behavior and just having that independency, those skills to be able to regulate your emotions, et cetera. We have started that work with Adele Volhard. If you remember, she was the deputy superintendent in Syosset who did this work in her district before she retired. She's a wealth of information for us. Ms. Trombetta and I started having those conversations with key staff at our secondary buildings, and our training for that is kind of like a mini model for us to get to know it first before we start talking about it with the rest of the community. So at some point, we'll come back to you and share more about that. Our elementary guidance counselors, as we said, humanities principal aides who will be working with us on our SEL programs, and they're at the elementary school. We have additional secondary social workers now, one at each of our secondary buildings, implementation of Common Lions Quest anchor lessons, as I said. It is K-5 currently, and it is now an additional resource for our middle school and high school to complement our health units. And again, those are expanding to the secondary. Social studies, we will begin to integrate our curriculum with Putnam BOCES. This is something that we've always had as a resource, but now knowing about the project-based learning, more engaging work that we would like to see in our classrooms, we will be full force utilizing Putnam BOCES. And again, training around that, we are excited. And we are also preparing our seal of civic readiness. And that will be probably coming through our curriculum council as we begin that to just talk about different opportunities throughout our community that our students might be able to experience. And then again, that's at our secondary level, and it's tied into the new regions. We will streamline and update protocols for our instructional support teams now at the middle school. So while we have all this new NWEA data, now we can sit with our students and really look at every child's skills and strategies, strengths and weaknesses on top of social and emotional needs so that we can make sure that we have the interventions in place that they need. If they're having difficulties in reading, is Read 180 a possibility for them, small group instruction, et cetera. We will also be supporting our learning gaps for all learners, utilizing after school, but we're really focusing on our Saturday programs. We recognize that there's lots of different activities going on after school, and we really want to make sure that there is almost like an academy on Saturdays for both enrichment and for the academic side, and that will be, again, K-12. I just met with our team. If you remember, we had about 45 members, our community, which consists of some of the folks from our PTA and SEPTA, thank you, ladies, as well as our staff who are looking at that with us, and as well as the Sachem Public Library. Again, just tremendous support from our community. So that information will be coming out shortly. And I will be sending out also a survey to all of our community members to just kind of get a feel for how many families think that they would take us up on this offer of having these Saturday Academy programs. And we will update and provide professional development for our instructional models and protocols for our integrated co-teaching. We already started meeting with our consultant, Beth Lacretz, again, another renowned consultant who's been doing this work across Long Island. There was a group of us from our middle schools, high school, and elementary last week who started working with her on our mission and vision on what are those inclusionary practices that we would like to see, not just in our inclusion rooms, but in our clubs and activities throughout the day, in our specials. We're really looking at this holistically for our special education students. And E&L, we will be providing professional development now for our middle schools. As I said before, they are dehubbing, and we want to make sure that those teachers have the supports that they need to understand how to co-teach with those E&L teachers that are pushing in, and or support the curriculum for when the E&L teacher might be working with the group, and then, and they need to understand how to modify the work. And then lastly, we will be doing another revisit from Tri-State. If you remember, we did that about 2 years ago. And again, Tri-State is that consortium of almost like a critical friends model where other school districts come, you ask them to focus on something that you're really looking to work on. And for us, a couple of years back, we had really focused on our middle school model. Just how engaging is our curriculum? How much is there consistency in terms of feedback from the community? All of those different things like that as a partner in our learning. So they're coming back in the springtime, and we're excited for that. Okay, so that was a lot. I'm sorry, but I really did want to celebrate everything, and I don't get a chance too often to be able to do that as
Mrs.
much as we
Hines,
like.
this year, we're going to focus a lot on coming out of your office, curriculum instruction,
Yeah.
right, academics. So,
Yeah, I mean, that was just like a
get ready.
small
Yeah, it's time
pockets,
well
right?
spent,
Yes.
I assure you, yes.
That's just our overall pride moments. Okay, so really getting down to the nitty gritty, because I know this was something that we had been talking about in a couple of our board meetings. I just wanted to give you an overview of our social and emotional learning program. At the top there, you'll kind of see our support team. So those are the people that are really responsible. I mean, everyone's responsible, but when we talk about making sure that the programs are implemented, if your child or a staff member is having, any difficulties, so our school counselors, social workers, psychologists, drug and alcohol counselors, and any trained and experienced staff that we have, as well as district office staff, building principals, et cetera. And it goes hand in hand with all the CASEL learning, just, mental health skills that we really want our students to own. So we have 3 different avenues for our program. We have Lions Quest, which is a nationally based program. It is all virtual. There's lots of different resources for both the parents and the students. This year in the elementary school, we chose with our elementary counselors to really focus on those key, there are about 7-8 lessons that are in common for each grade level. And again, we're expanding to the middle school and high school as a support resource for our health units. To the right, you'll see that we also have our health curriculum. So again, in our health curriculum is really a lot of common subjects and items that you would see in Lions Quest or in our SEL program there. Again, around everything from nutrition to steering away from drugs and alcohol to organizational skills, emotional regulation, et cetera. And all of the lessons scaffold onto one another, K-12. So it's common language, common skills and strategies, and it's pretty explicit for us, which I'll share with you. And then lastly, as you know, we have our peer education, our new SEL chairs. We are introducing clubs, which at a further board meeting we can share additionally once we've made those final decisions. And then again, at the elementary level, we've added on those humanities principal aids. And then, so these are all of those activities that we love to see that the kids are engaged in. PS I Love You Day, You Matter Day, all of the different common grade level activities that we do at the middle school, Project Kindness, et cetera. So those are the 3 major parts of our social and emotional learning program. So I know it's a little hard, and I apologize. This will be up on the website, so you can read it clearly on the website when you go in.
Yeah, Mrs. Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
I apologize.
I just wanted
was
to
gonna say, I can't even see that from
I
here.
can't either,
So,
quite
okay.
frankly, but I know that it's very
This will be
explicit
up,
for you.
Mrs. Floyer, we put this on under board presentations,
Yep,
right?
yep.
Okay.
All of you as board members have, a copy right there, so you can read it for yourself. And again, any community member, you can go and see exactly what it is. So this is our Lion Quest scope and sequence pre-K to 12. As you can see to the left, those are the, anchor units. So a positive learning community, personal development, social development, health and prevention, leadership and service, reflection, and closure. And it just kind of scaffolds on top of one another, but you could see right in there all the different lessons and the different types of units that we have. Just wanted to make it as clear and as transparent for, for anybody looking. This is also actually kind of a snapshot of what a staff member would see, and even a parent overall on those parent curriculum guides. This is our health curriculum at the elementary school. And this is for any one of our staff members can go in and look at any of the grades, look at any of the lessons that we have. When you hit on those blue hyperlinks, the lesson pops up, the resources pop up. Again, the parents will see the version of just what the units are. They won't be able to click in and get the actual lesson. But certainly if you had any questions, you're more than welcome to contact your teacher or your principal, and they can walk you through that. Because there are assessments, things like that in there as well. But you can see there, starting in kindergarten, everyone is special. So we talk about, just, belonging to a community of learners, and it goes straight through 5th grade. Again, these lessons, though, were created by our own health teachers, our health chair, in concert with working with our elementary teachers. So any of these things that we have here is created by our staff. And I just wanted to share with you our scope and sequence for the middle school. And again, you will see all of those goals similarly aligned to what we saw in Lions Quest and in the elementary schools. and then finally into our high school. I just wanted to share with you, just in case you forgot, some of the peer education examples that we've been doing over the past couple of years. We expand it every year. Mr. Chiaramonte and Ms. Gonzalez, we're actually meeting next week to kind of go through the calendars, see when we're going to start these again and what we're expanding to. A lot of the activities and exercises that come out of this is what our social workers, counselors are seeing, and or what principals might ask, or sometimes just very organically walking around in the buildings and seeing what our students might need support with. But again, starting with our original one, Project Kindness, then PS I Love You Week, You Matter Day, Grade 5 middle school mashup. How do you do resource was one of those like organic ones that I was talking about. Just it really dawned on our team a couple of years back that sometimes kids just really need to understand, have ideas of what to play and what to do at recess, which sounds funny, but when you're in kindergarten and first grade, it matters, and you want to make sure that everyone feels like they could be a part of it. Breaking down barriers, E&L Big Buddies. You can sit with us. That's at our cafeterias and in activity. How will you be remembered? That's more of a secondary one when you leave us and graduate. And then lastly, we're really focusing on screen time and social media. As we're rolling out our one-to-one Chromebook initiative, it's wonderful to have technology. We're all a slave to it, or you don't have to say slave because there's a lot of great things to it, but what's the balance? And we really want to make sure that we're not enabling or sharing with our teachers, modeling for our students that, screen time is the most important. We still want to see healthy kids playing outside, spending time with their family. And so that's something that we'll be focusing on this year. Okay. And, I just share about Google because each year, we just get stronger and stronger. And so, if you remember a couple of years back, we were exposing our staff to Google, making sure everybody understood what a Google Classroom was, what Google Meet was, or it was called Hangouts at that time. And now we're at the point where, God forbid we ever had to go back, we could have, virtual learning from home. Every teacher is expected to still have a Google Classroom currently up and running. And so depending on the grade level at the elementary schools, we mostly use it for homework and for communication with the parents. At the secondary level, because those students are a little bit more independent, they could be, completing work on their Google Classroom for homework, et cetera. We continue to offer Google training for our staff, and we do house all of our curriculum and our resources in our shared drives in Google, so that if I'm a new staff member or I move grade levels or anything else like that, everything's at my fingertips. And as you know, we do a lot of community surveys, and a goal of ours this year, Dr. Pelletier and I have talked about it. It's great to survey, but it's also, really important that we share that data that we get from our surveys. And I certainly recognize that we need to do more of that. So we will make sure that that's on the docket this year. And I think that's about it. I hope I didn't talk too fast, but if anybody has any questions, happy to answer.
Take a breath, Mrs. Hines. Thank you very much. Really informative.
Mr. Kieran, please.
Erin, the Saturday programs, K through 12.
Yes,
You
K-12.
said, you said you were going to send out a survey. What do you need back to run those programs? What kind of numbers do you need back?
Well, it's not a matter of numbers. It's just because we have it budgeted already in those pandemic relief grants. It's just more how many students are we talking about, so that there might be more programs we can run if we have smaller numbers, or there may be more clubs that we might be able to run. The budget's the budget. But, we have to kind of figure out how many staff members we're going to have so that we know, how many people we can run in a class at a time.
So they'll run. It's just a matter of space and.
It's just
number of
logistics
courses.
so that we know. Right.
We need to gauge interest, right? Also, we don't want to put anything
What
out
kind
there
of
that
classes
3
do
people are
folks
going to
want?
come to, but something that we can make sure that people are going to attend.
Yeah, and we can, we could certainly present it once it's a little bit more finalized and share the survey results and the things that we're thinking of running.
Please, Mr. Reynolds.
Great job, Ms. Hines. Just a quick question. So it sounds like we're collecting a lot of data. We're going to do baselines on students. You talked about at-risk students in the middle schools as an example. Who's going to monitor that? Like who sort of flags it and says, hey, this student is at risk, we need intervention, right? Because they've got lots of teachers. Is that the guidance counselor, or where does that come from?
So it's actually a team approach, starting in my office, quite frankly. Because we do have deadline dates that we want to see all of our benchmarks and our baselines completed by. As a district team, we look at it together and we meet with each building principal and their team. It really goes down to that granular level of making sure that we know in each grade level, in each classroom, the students, based on their reading level and their math level, who is at risk. And then from there, the building principal would be expected to continue to meet with those team of teachers. Our chairs would be expected to also be looking at this data in their departments. Our APs are actually going to be instrumental this year in working with the departments for that follow-up. And this will happen 3 times a year. So our focus, our goal is to make sure that no child falls through the crack of not knowing where they need to be in their individualized instruction.
That's great. And it sounds
Yeah,
like
and
them-
we're also doing instructional rounds so that in between those data meetings, we're going to be visiting classrooms, making sure that we're seeing adequate guided reading sessions going on, guided math sessions, engaging practices at the secondary buildings in the classrooms, really instruction that's alive for the students, but really focused on the individual needs of our students.
Great. And then with all the data, we'll be able to see trends, whether it's a specific building, specific grade, down to the specific classroom, perhaps.
We
right?
throw it right up there. It's nice charts of all of our data. We can see exactly,
And it goes
you know,
sort of
grade
that
4 and
for,
5, let's say.
Across the district, right? So can
We look
see
at
and make
across
sure-
the district,
right.
we look at each building, we look by grade level, and we look by teacher.
That's great. Thank you.
No problem.
Anyone else? Sabrina, please.
So with those Saturday programs, so there's no set curriculum or what the classes will be, or is like, what is that? What's the structure?
So it's going to be
look
two
like?
things. Our Saturday programs are something that we actually had, if you remember, a couple of years back, just at the elementary school. It was more of like those enrichment, like coding classes and cute little, things like that. That was through Scope, and we'll continue to do that because they do have a robust amount of classes. Our staff is always welcome to be the staff in those programs, but we're going to expand that to our secondary buildings as well, so that any child who's in a secondary program who might want to come in for some enrichment activities will have that. Where we're going to house them, I'm not sure, but typically we do it like Hiawatha, Samoset. The academic piece, that will just be our classes. So in the elementary school, it will be ELA math support based on their guided reading and their guided math levels. And then at the secondary level, we're looking at things because we don't necessarily need credit recovery. It'll be more review for those world language classes, for example. I might have taken Spanish 1, but I don't really feel too strong on it, even though I'm in Spanish 2. So I'm going to have a review class for that. We'll be doing things like writing skills, reading skills, resume writing, preparing for the SAT, ACT. We also have something called method test prep that we're going to look to run some review items on. But it will be mostly those major content areas for us. But we're also looking at, different ways to support through art therapy, other different things with social and emotional learning, as you know, we're, a heavy focus on for us.
I know, Dr. Pelletieri, I shared with you like a program for we're looking to get more kids into trying AP classes. You're talking about probably, for the all, with what were our goals. Could we maybe think about classes that will incorporate executive processing orders, note taking, things like that students need to be successful in the class? Because I know next year you said the 9th period would be a support, an extra teaching period, but really what's going to get these kids to survive in those higher level classes is knowing how to manage their time, to take notes, study skills, things like that. That I think if we could offer that now this year, prior to next year where they're going to maybe move into those AP classes and get that support period, that we could start supporting them now so that by next year they have a foundation that will help them be successful in class. So I think that's something good to add to that, because we could teach them all the math and science and English, but if they don't know how to study for it, process it, note take for it, then all that information is it could get lost on some students.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We've actually had conversation around that, and especially when the 9th period starts, but yes, being proactive about it now. Some of that work actually is in our Lions Quest and in our health units, but we want to really take that out and make it bigger. But we talked about in the 6th grade, having that organizational skills component once we get to the 9th period, and then certainly at the high school. But I absolutely, that was one of the major things that keeps popping up. The writing skills, organization, being able to take notes, being able to study. So when we come back and present on the items that we're going to be holding, we'll list all the classes for you guys so you can see exactly what we're having.
Mrs. Waddle, then. Perfect. Mr. Isonia.
Aaron, another thing to consider for Saturday might be SAT prep, ACT prep as a offered course, right? I'm really interested in this seal of civic readiness,
Yes.
which I guess is going to be something that would be added to their diploma.
Yes, correct.
If they fulfill.
Mhm.
So if we could get a presentation at some point of what specifically dedicated
Yeah, we
to
would love
that, 'cause
that.
I'm not sure. Is it something they do in addition to what they're required to do now? Is it a substitute path they have to take to earn that?
Yeah,
How
it's
does that-
almost intertwined. It's kind of like our seal of biliteracy that we're also looking to expand upon. It's just doing projects that allow you to have additional experiences. With this, it would be working more with civic government, civic duties,
But do they still take the same regions or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
What's the new regions? That's the content's changing.
I'm sorry?
You had a thing on there, new regions.
Oh, yes, it's coming out, well, we think it's coming out. There's an updated regions this year in social studies. Yep.
The U.S. history one that they
Yes.
take in 11th grade.
Mhm.
So the contents that's changing.
Somewhat. They're just changing the timeline, I believe.
Okay.
So they're not having as much curriculum for world history. They're stopping it at a different date this year, and it is more. It's not necessarily like essay bearing. We believe that there'll be some sort of project related to it as well.
So if we can get a presentation, I'm just
Yep.
really
Yeah,
curious.
I was going to just say,
Absolutely.
that is on our list. I believe actually you can substitute one of the regions for another by getting this seal, by doing some of the
Yep.
civic work. So we'll add that to the list. Ms. Hines, as I said, you'll be busy this year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please, Mr. Reynolds, please.
Just one more, Ms. Hines, just on the social media and screen time, right?
Yes.
I think we shared some comments on the board in light of what everybody witnessed in the news this week.
Mm-hmm.
How do we continue, what's the school's responsibility to help drive those messages, right? Because social media is not real life.
Right.
And I think that's an important topic. So I don't know if that's a whole nother separate board conversation or how do we incorporate it into this, right? So again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, is there a unit we really want to have around? Now, I will tell you, our librarians, they do have a curriculum around digital citizenship. And it's something that Mr. Renda has been working on with our librarians, but I definitely think it needs to be expanded upon and just make sure that the students from a very young age, I mean, we're seeing students, like we all know, younger and younger coming in with devices or working with devices as young as, 2 or 3 years
What
old.
they have to realize is anything they post now is with them for life.
Yes.
It's going to hit them on college interviews,
Yes.
job interviews for the rest of
Yes.
their lives, right? So
Mhm.
again, anything we can do to help maybe change that narrative or help drive it, right? We're going to need the community support, but that's really cybersecurity, privacy, all of that, right? So just
Absolutely. Thank you.
I just have a couple questions. I know that we send out a ton of surveys, but we continue to hear, I know this is part of the discussion for later that Sabrina wanted to bring up, but just because we mentioned it a couple times here about people not receiving them, what would be the best course of action for community members to take to make
So-
sure that they're receiving all correspondence? I know that some come from the building, some come from you guys, some come, how do we make sure that everyone's getting everything?
So I would say, excuse me, I'm just going to take my mask a second.
Yeah.
I would say what we've always asked in the beginning of the year, there's a pop-up on our eSchool, and a parent needs to really go in there and check their data and make sure that their phone number, their email, everything looks accurate. Because if it's an old email, that's where it's going to. And 9 times out of 10, when somebody emails myself or Dr. Pelletieri, Patty, anybody like that, Sue Buckberg, she very quickly can, update that information. But it's very important that people look at their information each year on eSchool, because that's pretty much what it is. If it didn't get to them or it went to a wrong number.
Yeah, we learned that you can accidentally block yourself, for example, from getting things. We had a parent just call yesterday, my office, who was getting their little one's elementary information, but not at the high school. And that was a simple click on the eSchool and the portal. So you can always try and figure it out. Certainly yourself, we encourage people to do that. And if you're really stuck in a bind, any of us will help people get through that.
And I also just have a question about the digital dashboard. Can you just talk a little bit more about that? Where is it? How to get there? A lot of parents
Sure.
are very curious about exactly what's being taught. So I think whatever the easiest way for them to locate that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't really think to put it up here quite yet, but so that will be on our curriculum instruction webpage. Right now, as you know, we're going through and editing all of that. We just completed all of these. So the parent versions, that's exactly where they'll go up. Since there is such an interest in wanting to just look at all the different units that we have, we'll probably put that on the front page for the first few weeks, and then it will be retired and put onto my page. But again, anybody can email me, and I'd be happy to send them any parent version that they need. Right now, our curriculum guides, as they were, are housed there. So the units really haven't changed so much. It's just that now you can go in as a parent and you can look at instructional software that we use to support it. You're not going to see the necessarily teacher lessons because those have the assessments on them and, et cetera. But as a parent, you should be able to see any of the units that we teach.
And one more question. I apologize.
It's okay.
It's more about technology. I know that we're having trouble with like what is the title called down at the elementary school? Communication aid, where they help with technology.
CSA, yeah, that computers communication.
I forget what the title
yeah,
is called.
yeah.
I apologize.
Kristen, you know
School communication aid.
SCA.
So do we have individuals who, if like, I know that we're throwing a lot of technology at the staff as well as the kids. Do we have people where they can call? Like I know where I work, we have like an instructional technology team. It's not just Jack. We have like a group of people that go building to building and help with all of the programs that we're throwing at everybody at once. I know that we have like videos that they can click, but do we have a one-on-one support where we could say, we could schedule it. I have fourth period off. Can you come in? I have 11 o'clock off. Can you come in? Do we have that type of support?
So
And-
the school communication aids are really more of the hardware based,
Okay.
the devices. The software piece are staff developers and folks who are working through Jack's office. So folks can contact their building principal, Jack's office to do things with staff development, and of course anything through Erin's office as well.
Yeah, we actually have BOCES staff developers. We have 4 in the district. They do have a schedule that they, are slotted to be in a building at particular times each week. So they can sign up. A lot of the times the building principal will hear, I need more help with my smart board. So they may set up something where people can rotate in and out of their lunch. A lot of the times the teachers will just say, hey, I just need you to show me this little thing. Can you come in during this period or when I'm off during my prep? So yes, would we like to always add to that? Of course. But I feel pretty confident that if a teacher really had an issue, there is always somebody that they can contact.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Thank you very much, Mrs. Hines.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aaron. That was quite a marathon there. I appreciate it. Just real quickly, I want to jump in and talk closing remarks in terms of my superintendent's report around our quarantine students and update around quarantine support. So we finalized this past week for students who are out on quarantine, a support program where teachers, and hopefully it's their own teacher, but teachers in the district, and if we can't get even teachers in the district, we would have an agency provide support. It's based on an hourly program based on the number of days that students are out of school, but the students will always remain in their teacher's Google Classroom. We've worked with our teachers and spoken with our teachers about making sure that work is updated so students have access to it. And then we will have quarantine support for those students so that they will have access to their teacher or a teacher to walk them through and support them while they are out of classes. For the most part, it would be about 8 days students would be out of school. So during a quarantine, so we would want to make sure that we continue to support them, and then they would just transition right back into class when they are back in class. But I know there were some questions about that. We did update that information. We put a great FAQ on the website as well, and that still pops up immediately when you go to the website, the back to school plan page, and that is there for folks to see. I don't know if there's any questions on that from the board.
Please.
Chris, once a student goes on quarantine, how quick are they getting services and
So,
instruction?
Yeah, so one of the pieces is that we try to do it within 24 to 48 hours because we want them to get the instruction as soon as possible. So that's the outside time that we're kind of willing to go with. If at that point we don't have, we will go to an agency and get them support that following day. We try to get it up and running as soon as possible. And I think that as with many things, this past couple of years, we've had to build things literally without having them, right, from scratch. So as we move forward and we get better at this, just like we got better at things last year, I think we'll get better at this, and I think that'll be smoother.
And I'm assuming it's a live instruction model?
Yes, it's not a recording or anything. That's a person.
How many hours is that a week for elementary, and how many hours for secondary?
So, Patty, I'm going to rely on you for this one. I know it's an hour a week at secondary.
It's an hour a week at secondary
And-
per day, core subjects, so it would average about 4 hours a week. And then for secondary, it'd be 2 hours a week.
Elementary's 4 hours a week.
No, secondary is the 4 hours a week because of the subject areas. It would be divided differently. And elementary would be 2 hours a week because they'd be getting ideally their own teacher.
It's 5 hours.
Oh, sorry, 5 hours a week with their own teacher at the elementary level.
Yes, an hour a day, right?
Hour-
5
hour a
hours.
day.
It doesn't have to be an hour a day. It can be broken up differently. Yeah.
We broke it up differently because the teachers, the feedback we got from the teachers, it would be up to 4 hours a day at the elementary. That's the way we
elementary
broke
level,
it
is it
down.
always individual, or could it be group?
If there are 3 students in Mrs. Jones' class out at the same time, it could be group, yes.
Great, thank you.
What if Mrs. Jones doesn't want to, like, she just doesn't have time when she goes
Yeah,
home?
that's
How would that
understandable.
work?
So then we've actually allowed where folks can do it from, it's virtual, right? We're not putting people in people's homes. So there are folks that were like, I can't do this, I have to get home. Well, you can do it from home as well, as long as we can work out that time with parents. And so they're able to do that. And if Mrs. Jones can't do it, we try next door neighbor, right? The other third grade teacher or the other third grade teacher or the fourth grade teacher. At elementary level, they're really broad in terms of their teaching and their knowledge of the curriculum. So we think that would work pretty well. We could go outside the building if we have to. We go across the district if we have to. We could even go, as I said, to an agency if we have to. Try to avoid that. We want our people doing it, and I've encouraged our people to do it and hope that our people continue to jump in. But if need be, we can go to someone else.
And do we have, I know that we've had this problem in the past, but do we have devices available if a family reaches out and says, my daughter's going to be quarantined for 10 days, we don't have a device for her to get this instruction? Do we have that available for them?
So
Can we take, I know that we've asked this in the past, but are we able to get a laptop off the cart and would it work in their house?
we will do what it takes to help our families.
Okay.
And so we had a medically fragile student go out who's a fourth grader. And I know we have 1-to-1 in fourth grade in carts. I know we took that device, prepared it, and mom came and picked it up so that child would have it during that time. So we will, bend over backwards to work with our community. I'm not promising devices for everyone, right? We are doing our 6 through 12 model and then 4th and 5th grade in the carts, and we are close to finalizing that. 10th, 11th, and 12th grade students at both our high schools received thousands of Chromebooks last week. Our 9th graders will have them through next week. It's really an incredible project. I commend our teachers and the technology folks and Mr. Render. But if there is a need, always reach out to us.
Mrs. Pickowitz and then Mr. Isarnia, please.
So I have to say, I do like this model because of the one-to-one attention. I know some districts are doing the window into the classroom where they're turning on the screen. The children can't ask questions. There's no interaction piece. When they're sitting in a Google Classroom doing the math lesson with the teacher directly, I think that's great. The only concern I have is going out to the agency, because then it's not CHM teachers who are communicating with our current teachers. So if we could just keep track of how many times it is going out to an agency, just because I like the idea that it's a teacher in the building or another 7th grade social studies teacher, 8th grade, but going out to the agency where they're not CHM teachers who maybe not know the curriculum or might not even be certified in the subject, that's a concern for me.
That's the last resort,
Yes.
without a doubt.
Anyone else? Good. I just want to read this email. It came from Kevin Delagar. He's our class government president from Sachem North. He wasn't able to come tonight, but he did want to give an update. He said Sachem North had an amazing pep rally and high attendance at the homecoming football game. Students are enjoying the normalcy of this school year, which they haven't been able to experience in the past due to the coronavirus. Also, people are very excited for the introduction of the service dogs into our school. Student government has now switched its focus to our upcoming food drive for Thanksgiving. So that's an update from them. And I think Gabby was supposed to be here, but she couldn't, so I didn't get a write-up, right? Okay. You good? Okay. Letter F on page 2, we're going to flip to. It's approval of minutes for September 1st and September 10th, 2021. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Reynolds, second by Ms. Pickowitz. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We have one visitor for the first section. Let me just check. Yep. One visitor for the first section. You'll have 3 minutes to speak on an agenda item. Mrs. Favaro Campbell. Is it green?
Sorry, yep.
Yep.
Hi, everybody. I heard with the curriculum and instruction, thank you very much for Mrs. Hines for doing such a fast job at a very long presentation. My only concern is there wasn't much about what you're doing at the high school level. There's a lot of K through 5, a lot of what we're doing for elementary school students, but our high school students, I didn't hear much about new curriculum for them or what we're doing to help them prepare. And they're only in the school for a very short time left at Sachem. So I'm just putting it out there that they don't really have much time left here. And we have 9th period coming in next year, and I'm not hearing what's going to be happening for them, preparing them for 9th period next year, or what's going to be going on next year for that. So that was just a concern I had. I'm not hearing new curriculum writing for them or new math for them. And I know that there's a lot going on for elementary school, but I just want to know what's going to be going on with the English department in the high school, and what's going to be happening with math department. What are we doing to reorganize at the high school level for those kids that are going to be leaving us, and maybe next year or, a year or two left. So thank you very much.
Thank you. On the bottom of page 2, business items, consent agenda A through D. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Scavo, seconded by Mr. Isernia. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. On to page 4, personnel teachers, consent agenda A through R. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Reynolds, second by Mr. Scavo. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Mrs. Capel-Edom?
So on tonight's agenda, we had several folks who were appointed to probationary positions. Mrs. Hines mentioned that we have 5 new social worker positions. And joining us this evening, one of our social workers, Lacey Donlin, is here. We'd like to welcome her to the Sachem family along with all of our other folks. And congratulations. We are looking forward to great things.
Congratulations. Number 5 is personnel support staff on page 12. Sorry. Consent agenda A through M. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mrs. Pickowitz, second by Mr. Isernia. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. We're going to flip over to page 16. On the bottom, contracts, consent agenda A through V. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Reynolds, second by Mr. Scavo. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 7 is field trips, letter A, athletic trips for the cheerleaders and the Arrowets. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Isernia, seconded by Mr. Scavo. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 8 is budget transfer and approval of a budget transfer of $50,000 or greater. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Reynolds, seconded by Mr. Scavo. Any questions? Please. Yep.
Mr. O'Keefe, could you just kind of give a brief overview so that people out in the community understand what this transfer is for?
Yeah, sure. And the transfer is coming about because obviously we just closed on our TAN borrowing. So each year we go out for cash flow purposes and we borrow a certain sum of money because obviously the fiscal year begins on July 1st, but we actually don't start receiving any tax payments from the community or state aid literally till January. So we're flying basically 6 months without cash flow. So we borrow the $50 million, which is the same we've borrowed for the last several years, provides us the cash flow until we start receiving our payments. This year, we received phenomenal results on our interest. Each year it's gotten a little bit better. This year, our net interest on $50 million in borrowing is only $56,000. So we're borrowing $50 million and paying 0.14% interest. It's just unheard of. Absolutely amazing. So in recent months, some projects that were not made aware to me in time for the budget have started coming up. The tennis courts at the 2 high schools, are in need of some renovation. Ultimately, I think they'll need full restoration, but I think we can put that in the budget, 1 or 2 years down the road. But in the short term, we'd like to repair the surfaces, fill in the cracks, and have the surface refinished on both of them. So again, that wasn't budgeted for. So some of this $500,000 will go towards that restoration. We've also had ongoing problems with the curtain at the East Gym. So that curtain needs to be replaced. Again, that was not one of the items that we had budgeted for. So we do have a firm on bid that can make the repairs for us. So we'll be removing these monies that we didn't need to spend on interest for the TAN to our contractual lines within our facilities department to do these two items. And then plus there's monies, that they'll hold aside for other projects that we identify throughout the year. So it's not that the money's being taken and used elsewhere. We have other priorities that have come forward. Instead of waiting to the following year's budget, we can jump on them now and take care of them during this school year and not have to wait another school year.
Anyone else?
So just for clarification,
Yeah, please.
we're not expanding the expenditure budget. We're just living within
Correct.
the budget.
We had monies that we earmarked for interest, because if you go back 3-4 years ago, that same $50 million in borrowing, we had $1.6 million in interest. It was actually over the budget, more than we budgeted for. This year, we have a phenomenally low interest rate. And instead of using those monies for that interest, we can now reallocate them for projects that we didn't originally budget for. And instead of waiting another school year for them, we'll just take these monies now and fast track those projects and get them moving.
Thank you.
Good. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 9 is donations. Sorry, it's on 2 pages. It's a donation from Patricia Valle. I don't know how to say that last name. Do you know how to say it? I apologize. What is it? Valale? I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Okay, good. A Sachem teacher of a Cricket Maker 3 to the School to Work program at Sachem High School East in the approximate number of $760. Motion by Mr. Isernia, second by Mr. Reynolds. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 10, Committee on Special Education, Consent Agenda A and B. Can I please have a motion? Motion by Mr. Scavo, seconded by Mr. Isernia. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 11 is monthly reports. I think we're going to have a conversation about this. So I don't know if there's any. Nothing? Good.
I could just point out to the group that the audit committee will be meeting next Wednesday night with the internal and external auditors to go over the draft financial statements and the draft risk assessment for the year. And then the external auditors will be here at our next board meeting on October 6th to present the financial statements for board acceptance so that I can get them sent up to state education before the legal deadline.
Thank you, John. Number 12 is public comment. For non-agenda items, everyone will be given 3 minutes. Mrs. Barbara Carroll. No? Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Hello, my name is Barbara, and I have been a Sachem resident for 22 years. I have a son in 12th grade, and my husband is a first responder. I love God, and I love my country. It's been over 18 months since 15 days to slow the spread, and we know a lot more now. Unfortunately, our rights and freedoms are slowly being taken away, a little here, a little there. Some of us don't even realize it. It just becomes the new normal. We just do what they say, go with the flow, and don't question anything. And that's exactly what they want us to do, from the president all the way down to the local officials and the school boards. Just be quiet and obey. Do as you're told. The 14th Amendment says, no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. I am not against someone wearing a mask nor getting a vaccine. That is your choice based upon your personal situation. What I am against is someone being forced to wear a mask or get the vaccine. Big difference. The government should not interfere with the health decisions of U.S. citizens. It has no right to do so. Our schools should not force our kids, teachers, and staff to wear a mask or get a vaccine. Kids leave school and will see their friends and family without wearing a mask. But when they come to school, they have to wear a mask. Where's the logic in that? Speaking of logic, where's the guidance and public service announcements for the type of mask to buy, the proper way to wear it, or how to care for it? The CDC says to wash your hands or use hand sanitizer before putting a mask on and after taking it off. And don't touch your mask while wearing it. Are our kids really following this in school? I think not. I'm sure they're touching their mask all day long. So what's the purpose? If masks are so important and effective, we should be inundated with commercials, signs, and posters all over telling us how to wear and care for them. But we're not. Ask yourself why. Could it be control? Just do as you're told. Wear the mask, comply, and don't ask questions. What about the therapeutics and natural immunity? Why aren't they being talked about in a more positive way? Could it be control? Just do as you're told, comply, and don't ask questions. You see, I talk about these things to hopefully get you to think. Think about what it really means to be an American and be free. Think about all the men and women who paid the ultimate sacrifice so we can enjoy the freedoms of this beautiful country. Think about the choices you are making that affect us right here at Sachem, on Long Island, and throughout our country. I ask you, the board, tonight to think about standing up for our kids and rethink about joining the lawsuit against New York State regarding mask mandates with the Massapequa, Locust Valley, Lindenhurst, and Manorville school districts. Take a stand and fight for our freedoms to choose. You have the power to do so. Fight for us. Let the parents decide what is best for our kids. As I close, I ask God for blessings and wisdom for all of the board members, and may God bless this beautiful country we live in called America. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carroll. Candace Bonelli?
Hello. This is so much better than the big board meeting at that other school. Okay, so I just, similar to who just spoke as well. I'm sorry, I didn't get your first name. What's your name? Barbara. Hi, Barbara. That was awesome. I last night attended Back to School Night at Chippewa, and it was amazing. The teachers are amazing. Mr. Sadens is awesome. But the signs are horrendous. There's 4-year-olds in that building, and I don't know if anybody wants to see it. I took a picture. There's none hanging up in here, but it's this sullen, horrific, sad face of a person with their mask down, and it says in big words, "Nope." And then then there's a mask like this on the next slide. Same thing, sad face, so like just totally depressed looking, not yet, or something like that. And then it says, "Getting better." And then as the thing covers the face and all you see is eyebrows, the stupid face's thumbs are up like this. I don't know where those posters came from. It says on it, "Stay safe, Sachem." So somebody made it here. I don't know who did. They're so not appropriate for the elementary level. Not any building in Sachem. I don't want to see them anywhere. If anyone wants to see it, I took a picture of it last night. I spoke to Mr. Sadens, and he was he's been awesome. But they have to come down. There's so many other ways that, like the hand washing signs, fine. The stupid, I don't know if you're mandated to put signs up in the buildings, but there can be so many better ones for our little guys. It's so sad. So if anybody wants to see them, I'm just asking, think about it. When you're a classroom teacher, you think about your classroom rules. Everything should be positive. You don't say no running. You say walking feet. The first thing these kids are walking into this building, seeing a nope sign with a sad face. And you're talking about social emotional learning. You're talking about the therapy dogs. And then when I come in and she says 100% of the suicide rate is up 100%. And we have these posters up. They need to come down. Everybody needs to do a walkthrough of these buildings. The propaganda has to come off the walls, and it needs to be cute signs with bulletin boards and everything else. So please walk around the buildings and get the signs off. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria Canino?
Okay. We have reached communism. All our rights are being taken from us, and you all are complying. The only agenda here for all of you is to make a buck at any expense. There is no logic or science to all these mandates, but you continue to enforce them. Why? Financial gain? You say you have no choice, but you did not join the lawsuit. That may have helped. You ask our children, what pronoun do you want to be called? But they don't get any questions regarding wearing a mask. And I want to know, when is the co-ed bathrooms coming? What our children are getting in class is indoctrination, not education. Call this lunacy anything you want. Just because you call crap a flower, it does not make it a flower. If it looks like crap and smells like crap, it is crap. I don't care how much you say otherwise, it will not make it true. You don't care about our children. You use them as pawns and allow the abusive treatment that government puts on them so that you can make money. Bottom line, I want to know now, are you going to enforce the vaccine mandate? Have the decency to let us know. I know decency is a scarce trait, but try. I am disgusted with the lack of morality, principles, and empathy. I hope everyone is feeling powerful because you are going to need it when the time comes when you have to face God. What you are doing to our children is abusive, and God don't like ugly. So let me ask you again, are you going to enforce the vaccine? I guess that's a yes.
Public comment, excuse my voice,
Yeah,
I've
please.
lost it quite a bit,
I didn't
but
know
just
where
to
it
be
was
clear,
going.
the public comment is a period just for that, for the opportunity for you to make a comment, and certainly you're afforded that 3 minutes that a board policy provides, but it's not a forum for debate, question and answer, or a mandate for a vote from the public.
Nicole Mingron?
Pulls out their kids. Then you'll see.
Okay, hello. I'm here to ask, why, as one of the largest school districts on Long Island, have you still not joined Locust Valley, Massapequa, and now Eastport South Manor in the lawsuit challenging New York State's unlawful mandates? At the September 1st board meeting, it was brought up and information was supposed to have been gathered. Has anything been decided? We are all aware these mandates are unconstitutional and a complete overreach. There should be no hesitation on what needs to be done. We don't only need to have district control, we need to have parental control. I should not have to see my 4-year-old come home sweating and physically drained because he wore a mask during his gym class. A class, mind you, that was held indoors on a beautiful sunny day. I thought the goal was to keep the kids outside as much as possible. He should also not have to attend his speech therapy wearing a mask, considering he cannot form sounds or properly see how his therapist is using her mouth to make said sounds. Also, at the September 1st meeting, you were concerned about having a budget to fund the lawsuit. The CARES Act and Emergency Relief Fund gave Sachem School District approximately $23 million. Did no one think to set aside some of that funding should we need lawyers to fight for our students and our staff's rights? Is there a threat that funding may be taken away if you do not adhere to the way the government wants you to use the money that was gifted to you? It seems to me this group of board members does not have the fearlessness like the other said districts to stand up for what is right. I feel as if all the parents who speak at these meetings' words are falling on deaf ears. It appears as though you sit up there and say things to appease us. You are elected by the people in this community to be our backbone and support us. You are not doing enough. You are not being vocal enough. Your proposed letters are not strong enough. The masks were just the beginning. What are you going to do when they try to mandate the vaccine for the children? Are you going to stand down and comply? I, for one, know that I will not hesitate to pull my children out and homeschool them. You all know the fight that's coming next. They are trying to silence us and make us complacent. And I have to say that this district is doing a good job of rolling over and letting the government dictate what happens. I would like everyone in this room to remember these dates: May 17th, 2022, June 30th, 2022, June 30th, 2023, and June 30th, 2024. If this board is willing to stand aside and do nothing, we will find members going forward that will be inclined to stand with us. And those dates I listed will be your final days. I, like many other parents, have said over and over again, we do not co-parent with the government. We do not co-parent with the Board of Education, and we will not be silenced.
Thank you. Lisa Ritigliano.
I'm going to talk about the masks as well. So are we wearing the masks because they work and they protect us against COVID-19? Is that why we're wearing them? Because I'd like to know why we're wearing them. No answer for that? Okay. So if that's the reason why we're wearing them, on the back of the mask box, these masks are not personal protective equipment and are not intended as replacements or substitutes for personal protective equipment. These products are not intended for medical use or to prevent any illness or disease. They're a one-time use only and should be discarded after the use and probably switched out 3 to 4 times a day, which they're not. And if you are mandating the masks, they should be supplied for the kids when they come in, and they should be supplied the right masks that are going to protect them against COVID-19, if that's the end goal. And I see on your sign that it says, to develop leaders of great character. Great character to me is standing up to say what's right in the face of adversity. This is adversity. And we need people to stand up and do what's right and say, if it's wrong and you know it's wrong, stand up and say it's wrong because it's wrong. I will not comply and I will not be a part of this. And there's a lot of us out there that are not going to comply.
Mrs. Favaro Campbell.
Hi, everybody. Well, I, for one, want to thank you all for not making yourselves doctors, medical professionals. You're not here to make, that's not your job. You're the Board of Education. You're here actually for financial oversight of our district. That's really your purpose. That's the civic lesson tonight. I'm not going to threaten you. I think that's ridiculous. We all have a vote. You can come out in May. You can vote for the candidate you want. I don't understand the threats. I think that's just not the purpose of Board of Education meetings. The other thing is when we do co-parent with the government, because there's car seat laws, alcohol purchase ages, CPS can come and take your children if they don't like something, and we're not allowed to pull our kids out of school when you don't like something. You're allowed to homeschool your children. Every single person in this district has the right to homeschool if you want to. I actually do like the idea of great character. My children do believe that every single child has the right to have a great education, whether that's at home school or in this district, and they are allowed to decide if they want to be called they or he or she. They are allowed to be gay. They are allowed to be straight, and we don't call them names because of it. And they don't have to believe in God if they don't choose to. So I, for one, just want to thank you all for that. So thank you.
Let her speak.
So I actually do respect every single child's right in this district to be welcome and accepted in this district. So thank you.
Guys, are you kidding? Okay. Mrs. Denise Stevenson, please. Guys, just let everyone, this is the last speaker, agree or disagree. Let the person speak for 3 minutes.
I'm not going to speak for 3 minutes. I'm just going to speak for 1 minute.
Please.
I'd like to ask a question. I know no one's going to answer, but sir, why do you keep removing your mask?
To speak clearly into the microphone so that make sure that that business is taken care of.
Do you understand what I'm saying with my mask on?
Well, I understand you, but I've heard that some people don't understand all the time, so that's why I did it.
You also take it off when you're not speaking.
Okay.
And you have it below your nose. I assume you're breathing through your nose. So good evening, Board. Thank you for supporting the mask mandate. Thank you for protecting our students, family, and community. I hope the district will be supporting the requirement for all staff to be vaccinated or tested weekly to continue to protect our students, family, and community. Thank you.
Guys, can we, yeah, we're going to go board discussion and go from there. Who would like to start with the board committee discussion? Jim?
Yeah, I guess we could pick it up where Mike started.
Ladies, please. Ladies, do not be disrespectful. No reason to say shut up.
Alex, you want to take a recess?
Guys, I don't want to take a recess.
All right.
Please, let's just do this.
All right, I want to bring up what Mike had suggested a while ago, is that when these committees are formed, I would like to see them formed a little bit more with a chairperson on each one, maybe a secretary, and minutes taken, making them a little bit more formal. I like that idea that Mike brought up. The other thing, and we have a list here, is that personally, I stand for accepting everybody on a committee. I don't like any idea of excluding anybody unless there's something that somebody sees on the board that we could go into exec and say, hey, you don't realize this person is X, Y, or Z. I would just like to accept everybody on this list for each committee. That's really my 2 cents in this.
Okay. Please. Yeah.
You know, being on the board for the amount of years I've been, when these committees were first established, there was protocol that was put in place. There was charters, there was guidelines, there was term limits, there was regulation that if you were on a committee, you didn't show up after 3 meetings, you were removed, and the person that was going to do the work was appointed. Mr. Isernia brought up some good points. My experience with committees over the years is that when they become too large, right, they become sometimes counterproductive. We've experienced this in the past in other committees. And, for one, I'd like to see people put on committees where they could use their strengths to benefit that committee. So if you're an accountant or you work in the financial industry, maybe working on the audit committee or the budget advisory committee might be beneficial. If you have, a skill set in we had construction capital project committee at one point that we don't have anymore, but people that were in the construction field join that committee so they can actually participate in interviewing construction management companies and things like that. So I'd like to see people put into committees based upon what their skill set is. I'd like to see, not that I'm trying to limit, we have enough people that applied where we can actually put people on committees and still have pretty healthy, robust committees. We could probably put 9 people, on those committees and have a chairperson and have a nice cross section of the community to be able to weigh in on all the things, rather than overwhelm these committees and having 15, 16 people who are now disagreeing across the table and nothing's getting done. I've seen it in years past on the Budget Advisory Committee. I've seen it in years past on the School Closure Committee. I just think, like I said, you could have good points of view and have a good cross-section of community in a very well-organized manner and still be able to get information to be able to move the district forward. So I would like to see them capped at a certain number and be able to give everybody at least an opportunity to participate in the committee that wants to participate in that committee. Term limits, charters, I think those are all good ideas where we could have a little bit more organized process of being able to conduct these committees, chairpersons and co-chairpersons as well.
Mike?
Yeah, this is what I'm going to bring up as a relative. It didn't exist when I was on the board the last time with the committees, but now we have committees who do have direct student contact. And there are some insurance companies that are recommending to their school district clients that if you have someone who, just like a volunteer coach is, if they have direct student contact, you really should determine the extent of that contact to determine, I guess maybe Mr. Clayton will need to weigh in here at the SAVE Act from about 20 years ago with this background checks and fingerprinting. We probably should at least ask Ingram and Smith to look at the extent of student contact with our committees and ascertain whether or not we should be background checking the people who have that contact. like we do with the volunteer coaches now. I don't know if anybody has any objection to that, but at least have him charge Ingham and Smith with at least finding out if there is something we need to do with that.
Chris, before you go, before we do that, before we charge Chris with homework, if we're not going to listen to the guidance, I don't want to charge him with the guidance. So I just want to be clear that if we're going to ask him to go do something and we have him go do it, we're going to actually sit as a majority and more than a majority as a board and listen to the guidance that he has for us and the explanation that he has.
I would expect he's either going to give us a legal obligation or not a legal obligation, right, Chris?
Yeah, so, and again, I'm going to apologize for my voice. As Mike alluded to, the SAVE Act, which was instituted in about 2001, created the obligation for us that we exist under now for certain staff members and other members of our school community to be fingerprinted and cleared. And certainly that obligation can extend to certain volunteers and others who have a level of contact with students and a level of presence in our building that would require it. But it's a fairly, it's a narrow and focused obligation. But nonetheless, to Mike's point, if we are convening committees now that either by charter or by construction, you want to evaluate and ensure, that the level of student contact is one that would leave us SAVE compliant, I'd be happy to undertake that in conversation with Dr. Pelletieri and the administrative staff just to make sure. And then also to come back and report to you on what those SAVE obligations are. I understand to Mike's point as well, there are insurance companies that are making those types of suggestions as almost risk mitigation strategies, as opposed to ones which would cause you to forego your insurance coverage if you don't. And we could certainly check with NYSER and any other carriers that we have about their guidance on that. And so, all of that is something, if you task me with it, we would put together and report back to you on, most certainly.
Mike?
No, he just answered the question I was going to ask you, but okay.
Jim, sorry. I saw you both put your hand up. So.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the committees, and which committee has student members on it?
The Diversity Task Force does.
I don't see it on this list.
It did last year.
That was a task force. We created a committee. Is it the same thing now? Is it different? Do we have different charters for these things?
I think we
Yeah, and I think ultimately the defining feature is whether there's a level of contact with students by whomever it is in the school environment, right? So, I mean, we would analyze that based on, and I can't speak to it, Vinny. I don't know for sure exactly how it's constructed, how it's conducted.
Task force, and we said, let's make
It was started as a task force, and then I believe the board moved it over to a committee.
Right.
But I just want to be mindful, this is only people that have applied from the community and our board trustees. So we still have not figured out any staff members yet, students that want to continue on our diversity committee. So just being mindful that could be larger numbers.
I think that
The
goes to
intention,
Mike's
though, is that
question.
they will have children on that committee.
Right.
There will be.
We would continue with that.
Okay, so then going along with Mike's question is council's going to have to find out if there's anything additional that the other committee members need to know if students will be on that committee. Is that accurate?
Well, I think the question was whether it's that particular committee that you're discussing or any other is one which would trigger, a legal obligation for there to be fingerprint clearance just as a result of the way the committee is conducted and the level of student contact.
Are there students on the SAVE committee?
I believe that there are, but I don't think so. I mean, I should say, I'm not sure that there are, but I don't think so. I think I've come and spoken to your SAVE committee on school safety issues and things like that. At the annual meeting where we review them. I don't recall there being student participants, but it's probably been a couple of years since I could, tell you that for sure, Jim.
So just so I get this straight, the basis is if there's any committee that's going to allow students to be part of that committee, then we're going to have to know from legal whether or not there's going to be a fingerprint requirement for the members of that committee.
That's what I understand the question to be. Does the level of contact trigger the obligation? And I would have to review that for you factually to tell you the answer.
Yeah, what my point, Jim, was I don't know what the extent is.
Right.
Because like I said, this didn't exist before. This is the first time I ever heard this. But I wouldn't want anybody to be surprised. If that requirement's going to be there, we should let the community know when you apply for this committee that you may have to subject yourself to a background check. That's all.
Okay.
I just have a question.
Yep.
Does PTA and parent volunteers have to be fingerprinted to come into our schools when they volunteer at events in our schools?
I don't believe that the level of contact there would rise to that level, Sarah. So that's the point. There's a narrow focus of what the law requires. I can't speak to what exactly everybody does, so I'd be kind of answering in a vacuum. I would think traditionally not, right? But my point is that there are other obligations. Volunteer coaches is a good example. Whether somebody's board appointed or coming in or having a level of contact, we do require them to be. So.
Chris, I remember reading that in the school law book that, because I know I specifically looked it up once before. I don't know if it was a few months ago or last year, but my understanding is that people that volunteer in the schools on committees are not required. And I mean, I just looked to see if I could find it.
I think generally they wouldn't be, Rob. I agree with you that it's a narrow focus, but the question was posed as, what I don't know factually is the level of contact that those individuals have in that particular committee. I can't actually answer it factually, so I was going to look to investigate it to find out whether there's anything that triggered that concern.
Anyone else?
Mr. President, I'd just like to offer a caution in that committees can get too unwieldy. I think we've all probably seen that in our lives. And so I don't want to say, well, I appreciate as many people as we can. There may be a time when we have to say, you know what, there's so many people in that committee, it's not going to be able to do its work anymore. And so we need to have some number in place. And a concern I'd have, quite honestly, is diversity just in terms of numbers of students, numbers of staff, numbers of the community members. And I just don't want committees to get too unwieldy. I know we have the advisory, the budget advisory, we have audit committee. You just can't get too big because then it becomes unwieldy and it doesn't work.
Yep.
So that's just a caution I'd like to throw out there.
Yep. So we have, there was two things that we talked about last time that I think that we were stuck on. One was the limit of people on the committees. And the second was, are people allowed to be on multiple committees? So Rob made a suggestion, Jim made a suggestion. Jim said everyone. Rob made a suggestion of 9. Does anybody want to? We'll tune in on either one of those.
Alex, the only thing I would say is, look, if we don't have enough people to fulfill the seats that we appropriate, and there's people that maybe have experience that we want to put on a second committee, I have no problem with that. But I don't want to chew up all the seats and put people on 4 or 5 committees, and then all of a sudden it takes up the seats for people that are just applying for one.
Yeah.
So I would say we utilize people as we need to, based upon availability.
There's not that many. There's not that many names on this list. I don't understand why we can't just approve them.
16 people on the diversity task force. I think the recommendation from the superintendent last year was 3. So
we had, did we have
took
5? I think we had 5 parents.
5 total.
Yeah.
Yeah. Two alternates. So if you took 10 people that applied for that committee and you looked at their application to see where else they applied, you'd be able to put them in seats and positions on other committees and still maintain a sizable committee that is manageable by the chairperson and co-chairperson.
I think it's a good idea to place people and then look at people who are applying for a second one and see if there is a space and a need on another committee, and then they could be on or not. You don't want to have people not be on anything because others are on 2 or 3 committees, I would imagine.
Yep. So where do you want to go from here, Rob? You want to see if everyone is okay with 9?
I don't know if I want to.
Vinny, please.
Yeah, I don't want to get locked into a number. I think we've probably got to go through this. Because what are you suggesting? We lock ourselves into a number on a committee? Per committee?
We could do a recommendation, quite honestly, for each committee in terms of committee chair, and the board member that is sitting on that committee could come up with a number.
Yeah.
As opposed to us saying on every committee we shall
Right, every
have
committee's different,
going
so,
forward
yeah.
9 or 5 or whatever.
That's fine.
But the sense then would be, we would agree that we're going to limit to a certain extent, and that we're going to look to place one person at one committee, and then if they have applied for a second or third, we would look then to make sure we have placed someone first, that they're the first come, other people, so they don't get knocked out. That'd be the recommendation.
Like I said, the other thing to Dr. Pelletier, I'd like to use people with their strengths and the skill set.
Yes, we can look at those applications ourselves and see if we can't do that.
Does anyone have issue with that? Please.
Well, I just want to be on the record that I'm for an open committee enrollment.
Yeah, I didn't know if
No,
after
I don't
Dr.
have
Pelletier
anything-
made a recommendation that you would change where you were, so that's why I asked.
I'm still where I am.
Okay. Anyone else?
I agree with Jim.
Vinny, Sabrina? Mike?
I mean, I just think what we have to go through the list and break it down and see how many people we have on a committee. I don't, having 20 people on a committee might not be the best. I've worked on so many committees. The smaller the committee, the more you could get done without, having, to have discussions so many times and arguments and whatnot. So I think keeping it smaller, but I also don't think that, if we can put someone on we're all on 2 committees at least, right? So if someone's on 2 committees because we have that space, I'm fine with that. But I also don't think we should just overload. I mean, diversity was the one that was the most, 14, and I know the recommendation was for 5 last year. So that's one where we might have to limit and then look at where those other people put in and then put them on other committees from there.
Okay. Mike, you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I mean, obviously the number needs to be odd number, of course, because they'll be voting. So you gotta have 5, 7, 9. 9 is a good rational number in my mind, just because it's large enough to get the experience of people. And if you use Rob's logic of targeting people with certain skill sets, those committees could probably function at a pretty high level.
I'm good with Dr. Pelteri's recommendation also.
So can I also recommend that people who leave their experience related to the committee blank are automatically not accepted on a committee? Just how bad do they want to be on a committee if they're leaving their experience related to the committee blank? Right?
Well, I think that's something that.
Point.
Right?
Good point.
That's a good point, but we probably would have to ask those people to go back and update their, knowing that that's a requirement.
Yeah, I mean, there are times where people don't.
You have to be fair.
Hold on. We're really in the business of going back and saying you didn't fill out the form the right
Well,
way?
if we're going to exclude them based on that, that would be unfair, right?
Yeah, like people don't fill out their address sometimes, they don't write what they're coming up
hey.
to speak about, and I call them up anyway.
All right.
In all fairness,
We just made a decision on something a couple weeks ago for that very reason, so I don't really want to go back and ask adults to refill out a form they should have filled out, period. That's my take.
We should find, and this is just my opinion, Vin, we should find every avenue possible to work best with the community as possible. If people left it blank, maybe they didn't realize, whatever. I have no idea why they left it blank, but a phone call to 3 or 4 people, I don't think is I mean, I know we're tasking Allison with more work, but I don't know if that's going to be a tremendous load of work.
But when we've got excess and we're trying to cut, those are the first ones.
But do people know that we were going to make a cut at that point? That's what I'm asking. Or did they think that everyone was going to get in, so they just submitted their name?
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm concerned that people might not have filled that out, not realizing that was going to be a basis for them being.
Listen, I joined committees. There was a whole letter, resume, et cetera. We forward. People know what to do. Right?
Well, our past practice though has not been that, right? Just my suggestion, not.
Please, Jim.
Just to back what Robert said, remember, if you get a committee and you make it, we have a chairman and you make a rule and you make a charter, three meetings you miss in a row, you're out. You won't have 16 on this committee. You won't.
Well, the other thing to remember too, these are all open meetings, right? So if you're not necessarily on the committee, you can still attend and observe, correct? Except for, I think, diversity, we didn't allow that because of the
Not
children.
necessarily. Last year, the budget committee, we ran that and we did not have, it wasn't subject to open meeting laws and we had closed.
So
meetings
that's
on
not
Zoom.
happening.
Are we planning on meeting these back in person, or are they going to be back on Zoom? Because if they're in person, then people can just walk in and they can just come and observe the meeting.
Because that was my understanding. Committees that to be on the committee to speak and have voice, but then you could still come in as an observer and just listen to the conversations. You won't be able to have input, but you can be there as an observer. That's what I thought that. I mean, we didn't have
Sabrina,
that last year because of Zoom.
Last year, the discussion was people wanted to stream them, the meetings, and people were concerned that if they said the wrong thing in those meetings, okay, or, asked a question that maybe could be scrutinized, that they would be scrutinized publicly. And so the question was, well, we allowed people to join via Zoom. People came in via Zoom to our budget advisory committee meetings. We just didn't stream them. We weren't required by law to have them as open meeting laws because they weren't taking votes on monies that were being expended by the district. So I guess the thing last year where the confusion was we didn't want them streamed, but people did join. I mean, Mr. Barr, you came into a budget advisory committee meeting as a visitor, We allowed that. We just didn't stream it.
Yeah, we didn't stream it because again, the public wasn't they weren't elected officials. right? And There's some concern about that, so, yeah.
Just, if I may?
Yeah,
Because
of
this
course.
was something that I was involved with last year as well. And the research was that our committees are not subject to the open meetings law, not subject to it. So you do not have to open it up. You do not have to have visitors.
So are we okay with meeting in person, or do we want to put them back on Zoom where people could get the code through Allison if they asked and they wanted to observe? Which one?
Either one.
Yeah, either, what everybody's comfortable with. I mean, it doesn't matter.
If the community doesn't feel comfortable meeting in public.
Yeah.
And we're gonna do it via Zoom, let's allow people that join in as visitors.
You
and
could do
spectators.
also, this month is a particular month where a lot of people all over the place. Let's do a virtual meeting, and then the next month we're back and like I will let the committee
Decide.
decide that.
Okay, I'm good with that. Everyone's good with that? Let the committee meet and decide? Okay. Vinny?
Actually, Dr. Pelletier,
Rob?
you give your recommendations on the sizes to the board?
He said.
Sure. You will, okay.
Yeah. Good. Vinny, you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jim, you good? Good. We're done with that. Please, district communication.
So I put onto the agenda to discuss about district communication. I'd sent Dr. Pelletier a little outline of my thoughts prior, just so he could respond. I just think I'm going to preface this saying to manage communication for the families of 12,000 approximately students is a daunting task, and I get that. So this is not, a bashing, but I really think that communication from the district-wide being pushed out to the community, and then once it is pushed out, where then they can find the information after that, and same thing on the building level. I don't want to, I have kids in 2 different buildings, again, not a bashing, it's a daunting task, but we're always searching for information. And who posts, where did you find that? I have to, there's one woman, Tracy, if she's watching, thank you. She gives me so much information. She posts everything on Facebook and the calendars and things like that. I just think there has to be a better way. Technology has been a blessing and a curse because there's so many modalities to get information out between Remind. Some districts are using Parent Square. We have Google Classroom. We have the website. Each building has a website that, even me, sometimes I'm searching 5 different places to get information. And then also the other piece I put in is a timely manner. For me, as my husband works, I work full time, just to kind of have that information within a timely manner, not finding something out 2 days prior that then I have to find someone to, watch my kids or someone to, my husband, if he has to leave for work, things like that. Just constantly putting out the information in a timely manner and consistent within the buildings. I think we keep talking about that. What are we using as the main way to push out information? And then where is that information then going to be available for parents to find? I constantly hear kids missing out, parents not knowing when picture day was, kids missing out on an activity or a sport or tryouts. And I'm not saying it's at the fault of the district, but I just think that there has to be consistency in the way we're putting out communication and information so that everybody, it's key. And we can't rely on the kids. We'll say they're middle schoolers, they're high schoolers, they should be responsible enough. There are kids who are super responsible, and then there are kids who the mom and dad always have to, grandma always saying, did you find out about this? When is this? When's that? That information just needs to kind of be consistent, in my opinion. And I think that, as a goal on a district-wide and even building-wide, to make sure that we're getting that information out in a consistent manner, and that where are we finding all this information, on the website. And then I'll speak to the second part. I know that you wanted to talk about it.
What's the second part?
The second part was that, no, you shared the link with us.
Oh, yeah.
And again, every year we should be going over this
Sure.
because you have kindergartners coming, you have new
Yep.
people who have moved
Yep.
into the district.
Yep.
So one thing that I found is, just people coming to me because I'm in education. I'm having this issue, Sabrina. Who do I contact?
Mhm.
If it's a UPK issue, who am I calling? If it's a special education issue
Yeah.
in terms of an IEP not being met, who am I contacting? A lot of parents don't know that. I know there was a document at one point that said, hey, this is the situation. This is who you contact. If you're not getting your information the first time, this is where you go. Where is that? And that's something that should be pushed out to parents every year just to make sure that things are being efficient so that we're not emailing 5 different people or going straight to the top when we really could solve it at a building level, etc. So I think that, I know you shared it with me, was found,
Sure.
but again, do the parents know where that is?
Exactly. All right, so I'm going to try to speak to all that in one. In that we do have our website. We are working through our website. Allison, I'm going to ask you to do a little direction here for me if you don't mind. Just go to academics for a second. Click on academics. So you see here in academics, you see curriculum instruction, you see guidance department. Go over to department for a second. So you don't see curriculum instruction, which is a department. You don't see guidance, which is actually a department. It says in the title, guidance department. So this is part of the issue with our website, and this is what we're working on. We had our first meeting with Syntax yesterday in terms of working through our website and trying to find things and help people. So if you go over to district, if you don't mind, Allison, and go down to all the way to the bottom, have a question. If you survive all of those things that are there, then this is a great place to go, actually, because I do have a question involving transportation. So I'm going to go over and click on transportation concerns. And now I have a concern about behavior. Who can I speak to? We have the name of the person you can speak to. We have at the secondary level, you'd go to the high school. You could speak to Mr. Sachs, who works with transportation, and Mr. O'Keefe, then myself. So we try to go in that kind of order. And all of this information is on the website. But who the heck knows that it's under the district page all the way at the bottom after 30 things that says have a question. And what does that even mean, have a question, right? How many miles is it to, right? So this is the type of information we'll need to get out. And you raise a great point. I don't know if we do a UPK package or a K package when kids arrive, and we push that out, but we'll start to try to push this information in there and speak to it each year, perhaps at our first board meeting, where we can give people, again, we have a great program now called Otis for Education. A lot of professional development goes in there, and there's a parent component of that as well. And perhaps we could do a quick little video about that tells parents how to find these things and where to find them. And the website will be better. It will be streamlined. We will put things where they belong. We won't have things in there. We found some things in there from years ago that, quite frankly, we need to clean up more on, and we will make sure that we do that. So to get to your point, yes, we trying to communicate to a district this large to all of our families and school community is a difficult task, but it's one that we can accomplish. And so we'll work to do that. With the website, with our communication, we had tonight Mr. O'Brien, who comes from Syntax. He took pictures. He pushes it out on the website. We have newsletters that go out. They go out on social media. They go out on Facebook and Instagram and those types of models. And some people do use Remind, others use School Messenger and other means. There's always something new. I know our Board of Education is using a new platform this year. So we try to keep up to date as much as that as possible. But it is a daunting task, but we have to do better. We have to communicate. We have to over-communicate with our families. My son missed his first senior picture, right? He's a 17-year-old boy. He could care less about his senior picture. He has to wear a handsome shirt, which means a shirt with buttons, right? And a shirt with a collar. He doesn't want to do that even still now at 17. So my wife is getting us emails now, like she had to work through that. And I know a lot of parents have that issue as well. The kids don't bring that information home or not interested or recognize that it's important. And we backpack a lot of things to the elementary level. We pushed more to the website, but we need to clean up the website so it's a little bit easier for people to recognize where things are and who can I go to get support. So I'll just say that one more time. On the district page, when you go to district and you say ask for questions, or do you have a question, that is a great place to ask a question about anything in the district. Go ahead, just scroll down, Allison, if you don't mind. Don't click it. UPK is there. All the different places you might go to and who you might work with, school nurse, if there's building use concern or school security, there's a ton of information in here. And unfortunately, they all end with me, it seems like. I'm going to try to change that, right? They all seem to end with Christopher J. Pelletieri there, but I guess that's the job. So what it does is it points you in the direction of the person. Yeah, it doesn't. We don't know everyone's individual concerns, so it won't always answer the question. But we have done more FAQs and things like that, quite honestly, that do try to answer the questions that we know that the public has. So
Chris, can I make a suggestion on
Please.
this page? If
Sure.
we're going to keep a page like this, is there a way to make it like, so just say your name, for example, we can make it blue so that if somebody clicks it, it goes right to the email address for that person?
I'm going to make your page blue, Mr. Piccarello.
I get them all. I get all the emails, so don't worry about it.
The goal is ideally, because what I often end up doing is calling that person and finding out myself. I don't know the intricacies of transportation or things that are happening specifically with UPK. So I'm like, Patty, because her office is next to me and she'll come over. But certainly it's not a live link. It's more, here's who you should speak to and here's how you can get to them. And ultimately, again, my name is on there, but as are all the cabinet. Or you could reach out to any one of our cabinet and we'll be happy to support.
Anyone else? on this?
Sabrina, how was that? Did I speak to the question?
Yes, you did. But
Okay.
I think still that the push out of the information is important.
Yes.
I don't think that push out's happening as much as it should.
Okay.
And I know there's times where parents have complained like, oh, this is annoying. I'm tired of getting 40 emails or a phone blast and whatnot. But then for me, it's actually worse on the opposite. When you're not getting the information.
When you miss
and
out,
you're missing
right?
out. And then you have to deal with that child that, I had a few friends whose kids didn't know about picture day and they didn't get haircuts and now they're when is retakes. It just adds a lot more to, a family than, okay, now we got to worry about, again, I don't mean to go on about picture days. There's other things that go on, but
Yes.
the point of that, just making sure that we're pushing that information out, that we don't always have to go search for it.
That's one of our
Because
goals this year
I
also.
get lost on that
Communicate.
website all the time.
It's big. And then people say, put it on the front page, and then everything's on the front page, and then you don't find anything again. Everything gets lost again. So like one of our goals is to over communicate, and that's certainly something that we need to continue to work on.
Thank you.
Please, Mr. Reynolds.
Yeah, so Chris, just, perhaps it's more social media, right? Pushing it out, having people follow the pages, but also on that FAQ, is the goal to put a button on the homepage, right? So let's get it from being buried. Let's just put a button, FAQs, or have a question. They go right to it, right? So I don't know if that's being discussed with the design.
What we try to do is, again, back to school had a ton of questions, right? So we came up with some of our own and we created that FAQ and we made it a pop-up. So as soon as I got on, I could find that information. Anything that's timely, we try to make those pop up so it comes up automatically. And as Sabrina said, maybe it's a pain that you got to go through all that all the time, but it's worth it because we're communicating as best we can. We'll try to use more FAQs. We found that it's helpful for folks, and we'll push them out as much as possible as well. But I don't know how often it'll depend on what we're talking about.
But even this link, let's take this link maybe and put that more prevalent on the homepage.
Right,
This way
right.
it's not looking and buried.
As we go through this process, yes, you'll see that. Actually, Mr. O'Keefe's suggestion was put it at the top of the page instead of the bottom of the page, and a great suggestion. So in its next iteration of our website, that'll be the first thing on that page as opposed to the last thing.
Mr. Isarnia, then Mrs. Waddle, please.
I think Sabrina touched on it too, Chris. There's really not one source of truth that someone could go to. There's our web page, there's emails, there's also individual Facebook pages, right? Have you considered maybe getting the building principals together and coming up with something uniform across the district where at least all the important information for the buildings or the district will come through one channel, whether it's going to be this website or they're going to have a Facebook page? And
We do have all those things, and we do try to push out on all of them. There are, as I mentioned, new items, new apps that come out, like Remind was new a couple of years ago. It's not so new now, that some people use. And then I can't recall which one the PTA is using now, but that's another new device. And so it's tough to keep up with them all the time. Some have their favorites, some don't, but we try to make sure that they are blasting it all over so that they're getting all these different options, because even if I put it all on the same thing, maybe someone doesn't use that one. And so we have to make sure that we blast it out, again, Instagram, Facebook, anything that's new, as often as possible to get that information out to people.
Please.
So each school has their own individual website.
They have within our
know
district
that, so I'm just stating
website. Yes.
something.
Okay.
So if the principals do a monthly calendar with all the events, book fair, and put it on their
Mhm.
website, the parents' responsibility would be to go to their own individual school's website, and they would have all the information. They can't miss out.
Yeah, and we have to do better with that. That's something I'm sure, like we were looking at the website again, and some of that information is up there. We do our calendar, we try to do it months in advance. And for example, it said yesterday on our elementary buildings, open school night. And it was over yesterday and today. So the calendar just absorbs that and pushes it back out. But it didn't know particularly that Tamarac's was yesterday and Cayuga's is tonight, like that kind of thing. So we need to do that individually. Yes, yes. And we'll talk to them about doing that.
Please.
Chris, to Sarah's point, years ago, and Jim, you probably remember this, every elementary school, every middle school, and every high school, the high schools all had a school calendar for the month and had all of the important things from
Yes,
concerts.
yes,
to-
we still have that.
We still have that?
Yep,
Because we used to
yep.
get part of our packet, and I haven't seen it in a long time, so I didn't know if it
What-
just went away, but
No, we still have that, and there's the district calendar on the main page where I'll see everything. Every school is colored differently, and I can see everything. Then I can go to Winona and look up and just see theirs. So yes, we can do that. We need to make sure it's more timely. Hi, Laura. I turned around, you were there.
Yeah.
That's all right, that's all right.
Anyone else on this topic? Okay. I had a question for Chris, but I think he just had to run out, so we'll move on. No. Listen, I'm just going to say this, and I'm not, this is not going to be very popular, but I apologize ahead of time. I do want to talk about what we can, and I'm going to wait for Chris to come back because I find it important, and I know that not everybody does, and that's fine. But I don't think that it's totally dead as far as the discussion on the lawsuit. We got some more information. They filed papers in Albany. We have information on exactly what they filed. We know that more schools are joining. And to me, and I just want to wait for Chris to come back because if I say something out of line, I apologize and he can kind of correct it, but this is where the legal comes in. So I just want him to be here.
Why don't you just make a motion?
You want me to make a motion?
Yeah,
to
make a
approve?
motion that we join the lawsuit.
Well, I have a question for Chris.
Okay. And then
If we
make a
can-
motion.
100%, Jim. That's what we're going to do.
we shouldn't be making motions on the floor.
Oh.
Yeah, let's make sure he knows that.
Yep, after this that's okay. Yeah, you know what? That's a good idea. That's a good idea, Mike. Thank you. Yep, go ahead, please.
I don't want to take credit for this idea because it's really Sabrina's idea, but I didn't even know this existed, but in talking with Sabrina and at Bay Shore, and then I got to talk to you a little bit, and then Jack Renda, could we have a discussion about esports in our high schools, particularly where I know we have a club, and I know they go up to a place up in Setauket, but can we have a discussion about, I know there's scholarship money involved, there's tournaments, there's things that our kids can get involved in, and talking to Jack Renda, he was talking about how interested the kids were, both male and female, with their switches and esports, about bringing esports into our high schools. Each high school maybe putting an esports suite in where these kids can get into these competitions, these national competitions. And
sorry to interrupt. Carrie Dansky runs the esport
right,
program.
that's the name I heard.
She competes all over. We've placed in top tournaments.
Maybe get a
She
presentation
has
on that.
so many kids. She started this. This was her passion, her dream years ago. In full disclosure, she was my son Michael's speech teacher since 6th grade. And she came up with this idea so a lot of kids can join a club that maybe aren't athletic, that have different capabilities. And she's really taken it very far here. I think she just posted, they just won a tournament recently, and her kids are getting scholarships for this.
So this thing has actually really matured
exists
to a
in
level where we
East
should
and
start
North.
considering pulling it in-house now. That's what you're saying. It's a really matured program now, right?
We've also expanded to the middle schools as part of our pandemic funds. That's what we are expanding to the middle schools.
We had like a top 5 Super Mario player or something like that in the state.
So it's really cool.
Super Smash, sorry.
Very cool.
In the state last year. Yeah. So, Ms. Hines, let's put that on our list, right, of presentations. We'll get our
Yes,
teacher
absolutely.
here
And if
and
we
maybe a
could
couple
reach out
students.
If it's not a good
to,
idea, it was Sabrina's.
Yeah.
And a couple
If we
students
could
maybe.
reach out
Yes,
to Carrie
absolutely.
Dansky, she fought in the beginning to start it. She didn't even get
Yeah,
a stipend
we-
in the beginning. She did it all on her own time to build a program that's very successful here.
Yeah, we would invite Ms. Dansky, Mr. Shump, and if we can get some student representatives as well.
Yeah, I have a former student who is making money, salary, off of it. Lots of money.
And so is Kerry Dansky's
Right.
son.
So it's just something that for that student who, we talk about screen time, but there's some kids, they're not that athlete. I mean, my son's that kid. He's awesome at Super Mario Brothers. There is skill in that.
Everything is balanced.
Right. And I'd love to
That's
see
the
that,
approach
yeah.
to everything. So Mr. Reynolds we were speaking this past weekend about screen time. We're handing out thousands of devices to kids. So we're part of this, right? We're complicit to the point that we have to make sure that they're being used appropriately, used for education. And when that downtime needs to come, that downtime needs to come. And you know what? I'm glad I just thought of this, because kids should not be charging these devices in their bedroom, right? We should put them in the kitchens, put them in the living rooms, dining rooms. Parents, these are our school devices. These are not, I need this in my bedroom at night with me, and I'm going to go to sleep by the glow of the computer lens, whatever. Like these are our devices. These are parent devices. They should be charging in places where parents can see. Parents can look into those devices and things. Again, there's no expectation of privacy around them, and they should not be used for continuing to do things like go into deeper and deeper into social media and things like that. We want them used for educational purposes. So I'm glad I got the opportunity to say that. And we will have a presentation. We'll get our folks in here, maybe a couple of kids as well.
Yeah, I'd like just to keep seeing more things like that. What are our kids involved with? What can they get involved with? So elementary, middle schoolers could see when they get to high school, this is something they can join. So again, just showing what's going on in our schools. And I think that's something that I didn't know that we had it until Mike had a conversation and shared that we did.
We have
so.
more great programs than I think we really actually know. And so maybe we do a little flashlight test where we go around looking for some things that we haven't shown in a while.
I was going to say it might be nice to connect our clubs so that we can talk about the new clubs that we've been bringing on the past couple of years, the expansion of esports, things like that.
Do we ever have fairs or anything down at the elementary school or the middle school saying, next year you guys are moving up and here's what is offered? Is that ever?
Yeah, we actually have interest fairs at the middle schools and high schools, typically the year before, so that if there's a possibility of expanding and bringing on new clubs. Elementary, we have a spattering of clubs at each elementary school. I wouldn't say it's a fair. It's more, interest of the little ones, but definitely at the middle school and high school. Yep.
Please.
I'm sorry, just quick. I did get the opportunity to attend homecoming at North on Saturday.
Yep.
And I was really, really happy to see. I saw the drama club. I met the drama club advisor. They had DECA there, and it was nice to see the kids all out. And I know we didn't win, but
that was the only downfall.
The only
of
downfall.
the day. But yes, to see all the kids in the white shirts and a ton of kids at the game supporting the team, fantastic.
And the marching band and the Arrowheads.
Oh my
and
gosh.
the cheerleaders.
Yep,
and
all great stuff back again.
And it was
Really
just packed.
happy
It was
about
great.
that. Really
It was great
happy
to be
about
there,
that.
too. Please, Ben.
Yeah, just different topic question for Chris Clayton. Chris, if something is not on the board agenda for open discussion, is it permitted to bring it up in
As old business?
as a new item?
Yeah, so I thought I had taken an opportune time to go to the men's room. I apologize. So it's the question of motions from the floor, right? And typically
Well, the
we're
question is, if it's not on the agenda for open discussion, can we just throw something out there and have an open discussion about it?
Well, before
Hold on.
hold on one second. Before some people shake their head, no, there was a meeting where everyone was raising their hands not too long ago. So I don't think it was
Not on the
completely out of
agenda
line.
for this evening. Should this be discussed?
And I just want to talk about.
I'm
old
not sure what
business.
we're discussing.
We're
I'm
talking
sorry.
about old business and the lawsuit. I brought it up, and I said I wanted to
the
wait
issue
for you
of
to
the
be here so
lawsuit
that
or
we can
anything
have the
like that.
conversation with you in the room.
So the question is, if it's not on the agenda, right? We weren't notified in advance at the 11th hour, throwing it out for open discussion. Is that?
It happens all the time, Vinny.
Okay.
I don't like it. I don't love it, but it happens all the time, and I can't tell you that it's illegal. It's right. I mean, if somebody wants to bring something up for discussion before we go to, we allow old business, new business, chaos, comments, screaming from the audience. We allow it all. So why should we stop now?
Well, we don't. We try.
Yeah, we try not to, Mr.
Try
Clayton,
not
I'm
to.
calling you now.
Professionalism,
You're usually telling us, we don't allow, it happens. Yes, I understand the
Sorry, you
frustration.
hear my frustration.
Yeah. Okay.
Chris, I just wanted to ask a question about the filing up in Albany and the information that you found out about that. The largest chunk of what the complaint was about process. And I know that for me, masks aside, and I don't think it's a secret that I don't like to wear mine, but masks aside, there's a lot about how the mandate itself was handed down and about the process and whether or not it was appropriate. And
I mean, so that's a public document, right?
Yeah.
It's a filing in a lawsuit, but it certainly contains both. If we're talking about the lawsuit that was filed, and just so that we're clear on the record and everything like that, the Massapequa schools and others that may have joined thereafter filed a lawsuit challenging the authority of Governor Hochul through the Department of Health and the mandates made by the Department of Health, asserting that the authority exercised by the Department of Health to impose masking guidelines and things like that, which we received, I believe it was on September 2nd, were in violation of, or I'm sorry, exceeded the authority of the administrative entity, and that authority was reserved for the legislature and ultimately the executive in putting a matter into law. But within those pleadings were also, and this is under what's called an Article 78, a challenge to a governmental entity's activity. And the first theory was that they had exceeded their authority under the law, that the administrative agency didn't have the authority to initiate the mandate that was initiated, and that was exclusively reserved for the right of the legislature to pass as law, and obviously the executive to sign into law. But there are contents of that pleading that also speak to, and one could argue, right, procedurally, if there is an assertion that the administrative agency exceeded its authority, and that there is law that limits that authority, and that this action violated that law, you're restricting the pleadings to a challenge on the issue of the law, which is a question of law for a court to decide. But there were also mixed facts in those pleadings that included a challenge to, or assertions of challenge to the validity and science of masking and the public health necessity, and offering alternate theories as to the potential detriments of the masking and things like that. And so there are assertions in those pleadings that would also, under Article 78, fall under an argument that the decision-making of the authority was arbitrary and capricious. So not only did the agency exceed its authority in implementing the mandates, but even if it didn't exceed its authority, the decision-making to exercise it in the way that they did was arbitrary and capricious. And that question of arbitrariness and capriciousness is one of, and I've had conversations with a number of the board members and a number of people about that. The question is, does that implicate a factual dispute and a triable issue of fact as to, the science, right? Because there are people on both sides of the science. Some believe that masking is a necessary thing for the control of the spread of the pathogen. Others say that it is not as effective as it is asserted to be, or that it has equally negative effects otherwise. Each cite science that supports their arguments on one side or the other. And one would argue that under those circumstances, you're not just talking about putting in papers challenging an authority and its legal ability to impose the mandate, but rather you're getting into a factual argument about the science that may become a triable issue of fact. So I know that sounds wonky and lawyerly and all that, but that's what it is. I mean, the pleadings on this thing.
Chris, if
This is the pleadings on the case. So I mean, obviously, I'm doing my best to summarize in a short conversation a whole lot of stuff, right? But at the end of the day, it is a mixed bag of theories of challenge under Article 78 that include the proposition and the legal argument that the administrative agency has exceeded the authority that it has, either under the Constitution or statutorily, but also an argument that that administrative agency, even if you were to say that it was within its authority to promulgate it, that it represents an arbitrary and capricious exercise of its power because there is questionable science behind the proclamation that has been there. So I can't say that it is wholly unrelated to the issue of masking because it's contained within the pleadings.
Yeah. Okay. What I'm not going to do is make a motion to approve it. I don't know if anybody is in support of it, but I will say on the record that we've talked about cost and we had that update and we have a line for that in the budget. And it's not as much as everyone thought it was. And that if, for me personally, if it's about process and how things get handed down from the state, maybe it's masks today, but we know that a large chunk of, the world really is fearful of a vaccine mandate or what comes next after that. And maybe this doesn't affect you or that doesn't affect you, but maybe the next one does. And we should have a process in place. And the challenge of the process, I think, is at least fruitful for us to join. So it's my opinion that we should join it. I don't know if we have anybody else that thinks that we should, and that's okay.
So Alex, I'll jump in just
Yeah,
again,
please.
because I know we've heard some from people tonight, but just as many people tonight, we've had just as many on the other side of this issue. Again, and Chris, when we talked and keep me within the guardrails of exec session,
Yeah.
right? This is not a, hey, let's pig pile on a lawsuit, the more the merrier. This is pretty much what you laid out, right? They're going to sort of decide it based on if she had the authority or didn't have the authority. So the number of districts that join aren't necessarily going to affect the outcome, correct?
So, yeah, I mean, obviously you would hope in a perfect world that legal decisions aren't governed by politics, right?
Right.
That you're not talking about a legal decision or an outcome that would be dictated by popular vote. It would be dictated by an interpretation of the law. Either the thing was or the thing wasn't outside of the agency's authority, and that's for the judge to decide based on the application of the law, the Constitution, decisional authority, and all that kind of stuff. Certainly, I mean, I'd be Pollyanna-ish to say that is, perfectly executed all the time, but ideally, yes, it would be decided on the
And am I
the law and the
paraphrasing
facts.
to say that the attorney who's representing plaintiffs in this case are hoping for, or what, I don't know how they phrased it, if we get lucky enough to get a judge to side with us, number one, right? And is it an uphill battle and is it really a long shot here, right?
So, different people would have different opinions about it. I think, that the attorneys bringing the action, if I'm just going to be careful not to veer into things that
Yeah,
they've
I get
advised,
it.
but they would believe, and certainly they have had the opinion and are of the opinion, having litigated a similar issue previously, that there is some strength in numbers. I would be remiss if I didn't say that was their feeling about it, certainly. And that on the strength of that, the idea that more would join on would be in their sense, a meaningful part. However, if you're talking about a straight up interpretation of the law, one would think that whether one person brings the action or 20 people bring the action, if the law is the law, then it should be decided on the law.
And then section 132 really talks about the political aspect of this, right? Would that be your opinion within the document?
I didn't commit 132 to memory, then I'm not sure which part you're talking about, but yeah, but I would say to you that, if there is, I'll rather
And
than
as a school
speculate.
board, we need to be apolitical, right? So again, that's just the concern of some people, right? If it's politically motivated, we're a school board, right? And it's a fine line because we've got constituents on both sides of this thing. And just as many people as we're hearing to join, we're hearing the same amount, if not more, saying don't. Okay, so just wanted to get that out there as well.
Yeah, and I just look at-
personal feelings aside, right? Because we represent large swaths of the community here, right?
We engage in certain advocacy sometimes, and the line is always, where is the appropriate line of advocacy? Where's the appropriate line of challenge? But I think, a lot of what people have talked about is a frustration that probably has built up over a year of having executive orders that have been launched. And, we've all felt the frustration, I think. Again, let's take the masking issue, vaccines, or anything like that completely out of the picture, right? There's been a year of the government on Friday afternoon saying to Dr. Pelletieri, by Monday, you've got to have this thing in place. And, for boards and to scramble and without another form of unfunded mandate, right? Do this, do it immediately. We're not budgeting funds for it. We're not budgeting resources for it. And, most rational people could see that a lot of times that would come down on a Friday night with a mandate to, be done and implemented on Monday, with no reasonable expectation that it could possibly be done. And that's reasonable frustration that people would feel about process and the overreach of governmental power, right? So, that certainly is a theory that is embedded within the papers that I've had a chance to review, but also within that are some pleadings that speak to mixed issues of fact and science and law as well, inclusive of some analysis of the masking situation. So,
Thank you.
Mike?
Chris, just little pragmatic questions. First, I was very surprised when I saw the masking argument. I think that's why I actually called you, because I knew right away it brought a triable issue of fact about the science, right? And I said that's going to become a battle of the experts now. So now throwing that question in there, the timeline on this, you're talking about now they're going to have to prep experts unless they concede that the prep experts. This could go on easily 180 days.
Yeah, I think that if I were to cite the most aspirational timeline that was expressed to me in terms of the expectations, it would be that, upon the filing, there would be a request for a 30-day return date with an expectation. I think most of us who have dealt with litigation with the state or the government, that the Attorney General who would have to do to address it would probably be requesting and would liberally be granted some additional time beyond the 30-day return date in order to get ducks in a row and answer it. Presume, for argument's sake, that there is just 1 day of argument in Albany in support of it just on the issue of the law.
Right.
Then under 78, the court would typically have 60 days to render a decision on it. So I think under the best of circumstances, you're talking, 90 to 105, as your timeline date-wise. If it turns out that a judge says, look, because there are within the pleadings things that I perceive to require factual analysis, expert testimony, there's in support of the arbitrary and capricious argument, there have been some suggestions about the efficacy, and the other side in their answer says, well, I argue that the CDC and others say that there is a basis to do it factually, scientifically, and otherwise. Yeah, I suppose a jurist could say, as you said, there needs to be some testimony on this for me to hear from the experts to understand the facts and weigh the facts and determine ultimately, if that's part of the argument, that portion of the argument. So, and if that were the case, I would imagine that would stretch things out longer. So I think aspirationally, you're looking at a 90-day turnaround under the best of circumstances with a potential for 115 or so if a first adjournment is granted. And that's without any kind of trial on the facts. And if anything in here ultimately implicates in the judge's mind a trial on the facts, as you've suggested, I think that 180 days would be easy to say that would take. And just to answer questions that have been asked to me previously, and they're all ones which are procedural and factual, so I don't have to worry about getting into advice that I've given you specifically in exec session. If at any point during that process the legislature were to act legally, and meaning they were to convene to pass a bill that's signed into law that says masking shall be effective for the 2021-22 school year, everybody involved realizes that would moot out this action that's happening here. So that's a thing to talk about, but
that would be part of the process
that's correct.
Some would be asking for.
Right,
That would
because
be
then
debate,
I
vote,
think
and public.
Right, I think that the theory of the case here would be that that's what should have happened at the outset, right? That should have been the ability to put forth the mandate that the Department of Health did through the commissioner, and obviously the governor had been behind some of the direction of that, I would imagine, that there would be that was something that was reserved to the legislature. And then again, somebody may challenge the law as being unconstitutional under some kind of different theory. I suppose that could always happen. We've all seen that sort of challenge, but that would be a legislative action that would render this sort of proceeding moot.
So Chris,
Now-
just to recap.
Sorry, Mike,
Hold on.
Mike wasn't done.
So Chris, let's talk more jurisprudence. So even if the petitioners win, there are rules for automatic stays in these situations. And even if it wasn't ripe for an automatic stay, I would venture to think that if they go to trial on the issue of the scientific evidence of the mask, there would be evidence presented that would say that the masks do reduce transmission of disease. And the judge would have to say, well, I may have to issue a stay based on that, because if I'm wrong, I can't undo the transmission of that disease. So I'm going to stay my recommendation of removing the mask mandate until I appeal. Would you think that's relatively accurate?
Yeah, there are, if I'm not mistaken, it's 3514, but for the CPLR, there are provisions in the civil procedure law of New York State that suggest that when you sue a municipality and a certain outcome comes from that, and it's going to affect the actions that the municipality has to undertake, and certainly state of New York or other kind of municipal entity, governmental entity, that they might be entitled to an automatic stay just on the filing of a notice of appeal. Obviously, it doesn't happen just walking out of the courtroom. They have to walk down, file the notice of appeal. Even if, so that would be the automatic stay scenario. And depending on what theory we're talking about under the law, there might be some entitlement to an automatic stay. There is also an opportunity for a discretionary stay. And that's kind of along the lines of what you've talked about, where it's just basically the decision has such significant implications and the implementation of the decision, presents such a level of complication because of its breadth and scope that a judge could, either by putting a stay in place or by rendering an order that doesn't become effective until a date down the road. There's a lot of different ways that you could cut the cake, so to speak. You could extend the time that this action by the commissioner is still deemed to be effective before being terminated by that judicial action. So, yeah, all that stuff.
And what's your experience on how long appeal to the second department would be?
It would be up in the third department, I guess.
Oh, right,
We're
Albany,
in the
right,
second
Albany, right,
department, right?
Albany.
So it would be probably a little, remember that because this is a lawsuit that involves suing the state, because the state is such a vector for lawsuits, any municipal entity is, New York State is entitled to have actions against it be initiated up in Albany in Supreme. And then the appellate court of first review that would hear that is up in the third department up there in Albany too. So in certainly the second department where we are, their turnaround times would be, you'd be talking year, 18 months. I don't know whether the third department's a little quicker than there. I haven't had any litigation in the third department in about 10 years. So I can check there, pretty quick check to say, hey, what's,
6 months?
What are the dates? If 6 months would not, you'd have 6 months to perfect your appeal. Yeah.
So even in a win, it becomes like a Pyrrhic victory because they win, but they lose because it's going to get appealed and stayed.
I think certainly the possibility exists that could happen. Yes. I mean, is there a possibility that a Supreme Court judge could render a decision in favor of the plaintiffs and an automatic stay under the theory that's there isn't granted and some appellate court doesn't grant the stay? It's possible. I think it just as possible it could go the other way. Certainly, you'd have to consider both of those as rational possibilities.
Thanks.
Vin?
Alex had indicated that there's a budget for litigation, right? So just to be clear, John, maybe this is a question for you. That's just a general budget that the district has in the event of any litigation. It's not specifically for this litigation.
Correct. It's an annual budget for any form of litigation on behalf of the district.
And then, Chris, the fees for this particular lawsuit would get split up. The more districts that come in, those attorneys would then just start splitting the costs out. However, it was outlined that if there's any work specifically for Sachem, and it lists a whole bunch of things that we would get charged for, correct?
Right. So, and just by way of example, you would contemplate that if Sachem were to join, you could contemplate that obviously a significant amount of work has already been done in the form of the filings that have been made, and it wouldn't be overly complicated to change up, or file independently and then seek a motion to consolidate. Certainly any kind of filing fees, any kind of service fees, there's always going to be costs associated with litigation that any individual plaintiff would be responsible for. But to the extent that you're joining with a group that has already, begun and then sharing costs in the future, it would certainly significantly defer, some of those litigation costs.
And then again, just a final comment, spending money when we have such a split district is a challenge. And that's the question that everybody here has to answer. We've got a lot of people on both sides. And again, it's their money. Right? So.
Anyone else?
Just a comment.
Yeah, please. I didn't see your hand go up. I apologize.
Yeah, you go first.
I didn't have a chance to read how many points were in that lawsuit. Like
It was
long. I didn't get through all of them.
Yeah, no,
So I'm gonna be
so
100%
this
honest.
is, I'm holding it up.
Yeah.
We've got between exhibits and the pleadings, we've got 2 inches
Right.
of paper here.
And there were many points in which I agree with, and there were some that I do not agree with. my main point is the process of which it happened. It happened with the masks. We got the order on a Friday. Then Monday we were told we got to wear masks. Same thing happened with the vaccines for the teachers and or testing, right? We got that on a Friday. And then Monday, now districts are scrambling. Take aside the context of those. Again, it's still that process that I have a concern with, that they're just going to throw it on a Friday. This is what you have to do. You spoke to it about unfunded mandates. How are we funding it? We're still trying to figure out the testing for the unvaccinated teachers. Where is it going to happen? How is it going to happen? It just throws districts, kind of in a loop, and that they have to figure things out. And that's, for me, the major issue I have is that process. Take out the context of everything else. It's just that there is a proper way to put these things in place, and that's through our, elected officials. And that's the process that it should go to the people we're electing, who's going to go to Albany, state their case, vote on it, etc. Not this throw, an order on Friday and we have to follow it by Monday. That for me is the issue. Not necessarily the context of what they're fighting in the lawsuit, which for them is the masks. For me, it's that process.
I had a feeling I wasn't going to shouldn't let Sabrina go first, because I'm going to echo exactly what she said. The problem that we have is that the state makes its decisions without understanding the ramifications it has on the district. So, for example, we heard tonight, if the state mandates vaccines, I'm pulling my child out. Well, we still have an obligation to educate that child. Right? We still have an obligation to provide a free and appropriate education for them. But it's not something that we budgeted for, So now if we had to go back to a remote or one-to-one learning, you're talking about millions of dollars. And these decisions are made on a whim, on a Friday night, and they're passed down. I know that there are people that say, well, the board needs to do this and the board needs to do that. The reality of it is that we have the least amount of power than anybody. And what it comes down to is that, look, the pink elephant in the room, okay, is really what's coming next, and that's that mandatory vaccine. Okay, I read an article today about our governor that said, look, numbers keep climbing. I will have no hesitation enforcing a mandatory vaccine. And the problem is that our legislature, our elected officials need to get control of that. They control what the governor does. Okay, and I'm going to reach out to Rob Vecchio, who just took a position as the executive director for National Suffolk School Board Association. I think we as an island have to come together. We as an island have to come together, okay, with boards from both Nassau and Suffolk, okay, for a legislative forum. Like we used to do. Longwood used to have a legislative forum where all of the elected officials were invited and you were able to ask questions. And one of the key most important questions is that, look, if you hand a mandate down, okay, for a mandatory vaccine, okay, that people feel concerned. They're concerned. I feel concerned. I'm very concerned about it. Vaccines are usually vetted over 10 years before they mandate them. Okay, and this is being, possibly considered over a 1-year period. Okay, without knowing the long-term effects of it. That we probably should put together some type of legislative forum in both Nassau and Suffolk County through the Nassau Suffolk School Board Association to have a legislative forum so our elected officials can hear the concerns that our communities have. Because the reality of it is that our elected officials are the ones that need to get the governor under control. They need to be able to advocate for communities across Long Island. Because one district, or 2 districts, 4 districts got involved in that lawsuit. There's 124 districts in New York State, which means 120 districts did not. Right? But as a National Suffolk School Boards Association and a New York State School Boards Association, it has a lot more clout to make change up in Albany and to put maybe a little bit of fear on elected officials that have the ability to effectuate that change, that our communities are not happy. They're not happy with these mandates and how it affects school districts and how they operate and run. So I'm going to reach out to Mr. Vecchio tomorrow to see if he can put something together so that both Nassau and Suffolk can bond together, and our elected officials can hear the concerns that all of our communities have with what's probably going to come down the line. So,
Mrs. Slattery, please.
So for years, we've been fighting unfunded mandates. It's not just now, it's for years. Unfunded mandates have strapped schools. I've been fighting for this for 20 years since my son has been in school. We've gone to Albany. I've gone to every legislative forum at Longwood with our elected officials sitting there. So it's not just about COVID. It's not just about masks. It's not just about the vaccine. It's about unfunded unfunded mandates that have strapped our districts for years. It's not a new fight, it's the same fight. A lawsuit isn't going to help. Our elected officials, we're unpaid volunteers. We have no power. If we say we're not going to follow a law or a mandate, they shut down Sachem and they remove us all. We're fighting the wrong fight here. Our elected officials are paid by the taxpayers in Albany that should be fighting not just against this, but unfunded mandates that we've been fighting for years. It's not something new. It's been going on. We had the religious exemption removed years ago. All the parents came and they were upset. Nobody did anything because it didn't affect them. We went to our elected officials. Nothing was done. This is not new. These are our elected officials, and that's where the change has to be made. Screaming that at volunteers sitting here that have no power to change this is not where the fight is. So this has been a fight that I've been fighting for 20 years. 20 years I've been volunteering my time. I've been going to Albany. I've been advocating. If we all sit here right now and say no masks tomorrow, guess what? Sachem shut down. His certification is removed, and all of us are removed from school board. Our elected officials, that's where your anger needs to be, not at unpaid volunteers sitting here trying to do the right thing, that are advocating for your students, that give up time away from our families every single solitary day to fight for your students. And we're told, we stand up and we say, taking off masks like we did last year, the next day we got the call, you're going to be shut down. That's power that we can't fight. But all of our taxpayers can stand up and can fight by going to the paid elected officials that should be doing this.
Jim, let Mr. Kiernan speak, please. But it's not, you did get a chance. You came up and spoke. That's your chance. That's the process in which this works. Mr. Kiernan.
I think what we have to look at here, and there were some very interesting comments all along the way, starting with you, Sabrina. And I think this is important. We have to separate the fact that we all agree that the state's unfunded mandates has been a problem for years. None of us like it. None of us like the rollouts of these mandates, even with masks, whether you're for masks or you're against masks. We don't like the rollout. It puts us all behind the 8 ball real quick. That lawsuit is ridiculous. That lawsuit has so much nonsense in it that I'm glad we never signed on to it. Yes, process, I agree. That part of it, we'd all agree. Yes, the way they rolled that out, I would gladly join the lawsuit. But then it goes in all the science stuff, the political stuff, and all the other nonsense. But you said it right, Rob. We now have somebody we all know running the Nassau Suffolk School Boards Association. A very, very smart guy, very smart legislatively.
Sachem graduate.
Sachem graduate. If we get behind him and we start moving together as school boards to fight these mandates and to make process better, so we don't get thrown these unfunded things at us left and right, and we all stand here saying, "Oh, now what are we going to do? What are we going to?" What superintendent has? We got to do this by Monday, you know. So I think we're all on the same board here. We're all not really apart on this issue. We are, let's not mix up that lawsuit part of it. Let's all stand firmly in the state needs to be told that we are not going to accept these unfunded mandates any longer. And we're going to go to our legislators and make sure they do the right thing. Again, I'm not saying pro-mask or anti-mask, not that. That's not the argument. The argument is the rollout.
So I was looking that way. Did anyone have their hand up over here? Okay. Just to close the circle, I understand what everyone's saying, and I think you all make really good points. My problem with it is we've been fighting it for years, and nothing's getting done. So why aren't we joining we can give every reason not to do something. We only need one. It's wrong. What they're doing is wrong. And at some point, we have to stand up and say, okay, it's not the masks. People are petrified of this vaccine. They are. And that's coming. I mean, it is what it is. Stop talking, Mrs. Ferraro, please. I'm going to stop everybody from talking in the audience. There are people.
Yeah, hey, Alex, just a point of contention. You're calling this woman out now.
Well, because I heard her voice. I don't know anybody else's name. I
Everybody's been
heard her
screaming the whole
voice.
meeting. Please.
Okay.
You call this woman out now multiple times.
Okay. Good. I still believe that we should join it. That's it. Good. Good. I'll make a motion to join the lawsuit. I'll make the motion to join the lawsuit.
We should not be in the habit of making motions on the floor. There's
Okay,
people
well,
not
they
on the
asked.
agenda.
I concur.
Okay. And I'll tell you what, and I'm just going to let this all out there because it's just, I believe in process. We made I asked Chris and I asked everybody, right? Last meeting, can we ask Chris to go a fact-finding mission for us? Okay. I asked him for that. Nobody said no. I bent over backwards to try to find a day that was good. I literally bent over backwards and could only get 5 of us there. Okay. It just bothers me that like, I'm not available. No matter what day I said, nobody was available. And now we were looking for that. Just hold on. I'll let you go. Just let me finish. All I was looking for was that so that we could come back out after that, have the conversation and then be done with it then. But we kind of just said, oh, we didn't have the support at that time. But there are questions about transparency in the community about, well, how do we know who it is? And how do we know that there's not support? Because we never had the conversation out in the front. So for me, this is now the conversation and closing it because I think it's appropriate for transparency, just so nobody says that we're making backroom deals. That's what I
Okay.
hear a lot.
I'm totally against a backroom deal. You called Chris to gather the information. Did I agree that you would have an emergency board meeting because we were going to be put under pressure to join a lawsuit immediately? I was fine with getting the information from Chris at a regular board meeting. I was fine
I had
with
an emergency
finally
regular special
asking
meeting.
you numerous times, send me the retainer agreement. I worked for attorneys
Well, it said
36
all of our
years.
names
Wait,
on it.
1 second. 36 years. Once I saw the retainer agreement, Alex, I didn't have to go to a meeting. I knew everything I needed to know. Anybody else that wanted information could go to the meeting. I already knew exactly what that lawsuit about, exactly attorneys looking to make money and drag out something for 3 years. By the time it finally comes to anywhere, masks are going to be gone.
We
So
hope.
anyway, that is my opinion on it. You wanted it talked about here.
Yeah.
I'm talking about it here.
Yeah, just so you know, I did say, and we can go back to the videotape, I did say special meeting because I knew that Chris was
I
already
didn't
calling.
hear you say special.
Okay,
meeting.
that's fine. And whatever, it's over. Yep, good. The next meeting, anybody have any other future agenda items?
Yeah, actually, yeah, we have more future.
Please.
Okay. So a couple of things we want to throw out there, right? Dr. Pelletieri, I think we're going to do a tech update shortly. Okay, so I'd like to see how that's going, right?
Did you say tech?
Yeah, with the
Okay.
Chromebooks,
Yeah,
right?
that's fine. I'm just
Okay.
writing it down then.
So that's one. One of the other things here is, if anybody read Newsday today, right? I think there was 6 districts that got a blue ribbon certification or blue ribbon. Right?
Yeah.
And the goal here is if we really want Sachem to be leaders, right? How do we start driving towards that, right? So I sent, right, a note to Dr. Pelletieri. So that's something I'd like to understand. Where's the baseline today? What's the qualifications to get the blue ribbon? Where are our gaps? And what's our plan to get there, right? Everybody talks about being leaders. Here's how we be leaders, by educating our kids, okay? So that's one thing I'd like to get on the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think our teachers are doing a really good job
They
educating
are,
our kids. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
Okay, we're not blue ribbon,
Yeah.
right? Okay. The other thing is, one thing here, just open for discussion, engaging with the PTA at all the local schools, right? To understand local issues, right? The Hiawatha issue floated around, fast and furious. There was some other things about Winona with class sizes, right? So how do we engage the PTA more often to understand what's happening on the ground in these schools? Okay, so we could talk through that, figure out if there's some sort of process to do that, okay?
Gotcha.
If you don't mind, we used to, well, maybe you remember, we used to have board members assigned to different schools.
Yeah.
For the PTA.
So we should maybe have a PTA sort of liaison to the board from
Yeah.
each school, perhaps, something like that.
Yeah,
Right? Just
yeah,
open to
I
that.
like the idea.
We're getting some feedback directly from the people who are in the schools every day.
Well, we do have PTA, the PTA council. So I mean, I know there's a meeting coming up September 29th. I think any of us are probably welcome to attend that.
What's the feedback?
Do they do it
loop
in
to
here?
us, right?
That's where you have one representative
they do
from
it there?
every single
Yeah.
PTA building, from elementary to high
So do
school.
they come here to present to us? Or do we understand? We go there? That's
Yeah.
fine.
And then you could join in and you could hear their concerns. They'll discuss.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure class sizes is going to come up in that conversation. I mean, I know our PTA council members were here and they're no longer here, but
Yeah.
that's a wonderful place to have that conversation with the PTA, that if you want to be a part of that conversation with
Yeah,
them,
I'm
there's,
just looking to get, information, what's happening at the ground, right? What are the issues so they percolate up to us as appropriate, right?
Yes.
Okay. Also, the ninth period updates sometime within the next, whenever the administration's ready to sort of update us on how we're tracking for that, what's that going to look like, right? We talked about a recess issue, which we got from the community. I don't know where we ever landed on that. So did we ever close the loop on that? No. Okay, so that's an open item, which really then goes back to one of the things I've asked Alex, you and Rob.
Yeah,
right,
we had a conversation
which
about
is, we have a lot of things that we need to go through and talk about as a board. How are we tracking these things?
Yep.
And can we plan these out months in advance or a couple of meetings in advance?
Yeah,
so
and I'd like to
the
do
community
it
knows
out
what
here
we're
forever.
talking about,
Everything should be out here,
Right?
just
Yeah.
so for future.
Say that again? What did
All the conversations should happen here so that everyone can have a chance to give input, if they
Yeah,
come, if
that's-
they
that's
see
what
it and.
This is about.
Yeah.
My suggestion to you was, let's start maybe structuring it this way so we can kind of.
Yeah, like we're not going to put all of
Separate
these
them.
on the next agenda, but maybe we'll talk
Exactly.
about.
This-
and
this
they
is
get-
another-
I would ask that we
Couple of
spread it
people.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and
right.
Rob and Jim, you'll remember this, we would plan out presentations, curriculum, instruction, technology, for like months in advance. They'd be presentations. This way, the teachers, whoever was presenting, would have a heads up. They would come. Erin, you were involved in a lot of that, Ms. Hines, and give presentations to the board, to the community. But they were presentations. Literally, you could look at future agendas for the year,
Yep.
and then there would be different things that would come up. But project-based learning, we had different things. If you go back on the board presentations.
And just,
Well,
Vinny, just to piggyback on what you were just
Yeah, go
saying,
ahead.
just with regarding to future agenda items, what used to happen in the past is that superintendent would always record them, and they would actually be part of our board packet. So we had a running list, so we knew exactly when, what
Yeah, we
was-
started
I'd
that
also like-
again
I'd like
this
a
week.
Feedback loop,
Yeah.
so we know
Mhm.
that issue's closed, it's not hanging out there. Was it resolved? Is the community happy with it, right?
I thought we
Basic
did
stuff.
speak to and close the piece on recess, that there was a concern around it being used as a disciplinary means.
Yeah.
And we talked about how the teachers, we'd work with administrators and work with, again, making that kind of a last resort
We
type
did
of
have
thing.
this conversation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it was ever, I'm asking the question, and it sounds like people are shaking their heads no, so we don't know if there's a resolution. Again, we don't have to get into it now. These are just things that are out there that I don't think I've ever heard a resolution on it, right? I think that's about it that I have. Just one other thing here. We have events at the school, and we invite a lot of the local politicians. Just a concern with that, right? It's a fine line, because we need our politicians to lobby for us in Albany, but I also want to make sure that we're not allowing them to use it as any type of campaign platforms, right? So they come, they speak, which is great. I just want to be cognizant of that. So maybe we can talk about the role of that. And if we're going to invite a politician, we should probably know in advance what they're going to say. Okay? Exactly. Thank you.
What? Go ahead.
I spoke to Dr. Pelletier at this just a couple of days ago. I received a phone call from the Economic Opportunity Council, who's been trying to work with us over the last couple of years. This particular council, the person that reached out to me was a Cynthia Amato, who said to me that she tried getting it 2 years ago. COVID hit. We couldn't really accommodate it. Last year we were hybrid. It really wasn't a good platform to be able to bring this council in to assist with our students, and as a result, we didn't bring them in. But they have an Empire State grant that is pretty considerable that they're looking to spend and get into Sachem by providing after-school opportunities for our children. Approximately 110 at each middle school is what they budgeted for, where they can provide Class is free of charge on SEL, cooking, yoga, coding, college readiness, robotics, esports. It's one of the things, they said they could accommodate anything. They've done drama and theater where they provided, the funding for talent shows for these particular schools. This year is a little bit more normal year. And what I'd like to see is, I don't know if you probably reached out to her, somebody reached out to her, that we try to at least research this to find out the feasibility. They are in Pat Met already. They are in William Floyd. They're in South Country. But it's a great opportunity to take, local monies from state grants to be able to benefit our children. If we can just get some type of update after your conversation as to whether or not it's feasible, what's involved in it, if there's a caveat of other things that we have to do in order to allow them to come in that maybe makes it not feasible, but at least an update back to the board. So this money is going to expire in August 2023. And I'd love to be able to tap into it to provide opportunities for our kids. So if we can get an update maybe at a future meeting, it'd be great.
I can give you an update
Yeah.
right now.
Oh,
Yeah, I
perfect.
was
That
going to say, I'm sorry. I actually connected with Ms. Amato about 2 years ago. I wrote the grant with her because at that time, if you remember, we had switched to scope in terms of our aftercare. And there was a great concern around middle school, in particular 6th grade, that they were not involved in that. Ms. Amato had reached us to us. It was just one of those kind of, perfect moments. We did get the grant. She did reach out to us again towards the end of this summertime. We've been kind of playing phone tag, but it would be the same thing. Obviously, last year we couldn't do it. We weren't letting people come into the buildings. It was virtual, but very similar to scope, but now it would be for the middle school. So I expect that we'll connect this week. We'll be able to give you guys feedback and information around that. And it would be housed at each of our 3 middle schools. I think really the only issue for us again was we couldn't do it in person, and they were looking for a space within each building. So we would just have to work with the principals on that.
I mean, I threw a lot of curveballs at it because, I said, look, we have an SEL program. We have a teacher that does a wonderful
Yeah, she's
job
lovely.
with it.
I mean, right.
And she said to me, she goes, we'll even hire your teachers to teach the courses.
Yep.
They'll so we could have continuation.
They
maybe
really
expand
accommodate and
upon
make the menu what we're looking for it to be. Yeah.
So that's fantastic. Thank you.
Vin? Okay. Anyone else? Please.
Hopefully last one. So I saw that Linwood has that buddy program with the parents where like you have a veteran family teaming up with a newer family to the district. I think that's awesome. I wonder how we can use that more on a district level wide. I know, for me, I have experience up till 7th grade, middle school. My child's going to go in high school in 2 years. I would love to be able to hear input from parents in the high school of programs and what works, getting input from families whose students have been through it, whether it's some type of roundtable discussions, even, again, maybe that buddy program, just where someone who's new and walking into a building feels more comfortable. Because I know I looked at the high school curriculum guide and I wanted to throw up. It was overwhelming. So I think just getting input from parents who have been through it, having that ability to connect and talk, whether, again, it's in a discussion, a roundtable with you're meeting with parents that are willing to come in and give input and share with parents who are new, just building upon. So I'm curious how that Linwood program goes and then how we could expand it throughout the district.
Yeah, I think that could also be something that we talk about. I'm going to be at that PTA curriculum council, that curriculum PTA council meeting next week. And that's something we could bring up there as well. I think it's a great venue for PTA. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. I wrote all over this. Let me see. The next regular meeting of the Board of Ed will be on Wednesday, October 6th, 2021 at 7 o'clock right here in the Annex Boardroom. Can I please have a motion to move into executive session to discuss the employment of a particular personnel, matters relating to a particular student, and legal advice regarding pending or potential litigation? Motion by Mrs. Slattery, second by Mr. Isernia. All in favor? Thank you. You wrote all that down?
I did.
Sabrina, I know that you said you had to go, so if it's, yeah.